You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinTheMorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
How about you, Liberty?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Special guest Jim Munnis, what's it called?
Well, MikeGinTheMorning.com.
That is correct, sir. You can check out all the shenanigans that Mike G and Philly Chris are up to throughout the entire week. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who listen to check us out at MikeGinTheMorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams, bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino, bringing you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro, bringing you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles, bringing you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've got a very special guest joining us. We've got Jim Munnis, who's an attorney, and he is also a pro wrestling manager. And I like to call him the most interesting man in the world. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. The pressure's on now. I don't know about the most interesting man in the world, but let's have some fun.
Well, I'll tell you this. The way I met Jim was I was on LinkedIn, the social media website, and I noticed that there was a gentleman commenting on a whole lot of the conservative-leaning political type posts. And I take a look and I notice he's right in Chester County. I said, get out of here. This guy's in my backyard. Seems like we're like-minded. So I added him and I start seeing all the things in his feed. And he's at the horse races one day, and he's dressed up in this special getup, and he's always doing these extremely interesting things. And finally, I commented on one of his posts. I said, I want to be Jim Munnis when I grow up. That's what I want to do. I don't know if you recall that, Jim.
I remember that. Yes,
but you led quite the interesting life. Before we get into the man of the hour and start talking about your story, very fascinating things, I do want to briefly touch on a political issue because I think we would be absolutely insane and living under a rock to not discuss in any way whatsoever the fact that Trump was indicted.
Yeah.
Now, Jim, as an attorney, do you have any thoughts about this in general?
Well, obviously, we've done some what they're calling criminal work, and the burden of proof, and this is just off the top of my head here, we're just talking about this right now because we weren't planning this, obviously, but the burden of proof is beyond that reasonable doubt. And when you
Trump's
get a
calling you now, isn't he?
That's Trump calling Jim. That's President Trump calling you. That's what it was.
I thought it may happen. It happened later in life than I thought it would, but maybe it's happening now. But the burden of proof, and this obviously is political, and I know you guys are going to talk about that in a couple of seconds, but it really is disappointing to see something like that. And I thought from what I was reading the last couple of days that they weren't going to do it, and justice was going to kind of prevail, and the grand jury was going to prove that it's not all political. Well, apparently that didn't happen again. It's New York City. Why are we surprised?
Now, Jim, here's another question, though. how could Trump possibly have a fair trial in a venue like that? Could you say that any juror could possibly go in there and be able to rule fairly in that case? Because if anybody in the world couldn't have a fair trial based on that reason, it would be Trump. Because how many people do you meet that you ask them what they think about Trump, and they're like, oh, I don't think anything about him one way or the other. It never happens.
No.
They love him or they can't stand him. So that's going to be really difficult, isn't it?
That is so true. And the problem with that is I've heard from people, and when you get older, like I am, you don't really care anymore about things. You care about what people say and think for you individually, but I'm not afraid to say things. And I was speaking to people, judges and jurors. I was afraid to rule for something, and in this situation for Donald Trump, because the people would protest outside my home. The people would protest outside my business. And so they throw the guilty plea, or he's not guilty of anything yet, but obviously they're holding it over for trial. It's a situation where I question if the facts were there, but there's a fear. What if I excuse this man for what he did or didn't do, I'm going to be in trouble, and the press is going to get on my case, and all these lame, I guess I won't curse, but lame, what stations are going to comment about what a terrible person, Mike or Jim or Chris is, because they ruled in favor of Donald Trump. Sadly, it doesn't work the other way too well, because we're supposed to be more polished and more kind and nicer. And I hope that starts to change, because he's getting railroaded right here.
Yeah, and we will see how this ultimately unfolds. There is a lot to happen yet. Even in Pennsylvania, when we're dealing with cases, you got that first stage in the preliminary hearing, and even some cases that shouldn't be bound over are ultimately bound over. You've got the MDJs who rubber stamp these things, and sometimes people who are unfamiliar with the criminal process will be all freaked out about that. And they say, well, listen, you got to tell them any single case that I've ever gotten full acquittal on was bound over at the preliminary hearing, right? Because that's how these things start. So we're very, very early in the game, and people have to understand that. And if he comes out on top in this, it's very likely to backfire on them, because there were certain people when they did the raid for the documents who thought that was incredibly unfair, the way they treated him.
Right.
And maybe swayed them more towards, hey, they're picking on this guy. They see a little bit of them in him when that stuff happens. And if he makes it out of this, it may give him the steam that he needs. Chris, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's probably going to turn into nothing, and he'll get out of it, and it's just going to help his campaign and, gather more support behind him. So I think that's where we'll see this go, but it's just ridiculous. Knowing some of the limited facts that are out there now, it just shows you again, and we've talked about this on the show, and I mentioned it, how ridiculously corrupt our judicial system is at this point. I mean, it's crazy that they're going after him. So, yeah.
Chris, we got a couple of.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead,
sorry.
Jim. All yours.
I was just going to say, I've seen it in a much smaller case where, in the district courts, but for the prelims, they make up some sword versus shield situations for criminal case, and that's not even in any statute, and yet they throw that in there to hold it over for trial. And I will say, I've seen this in my law practice, where I'm positive I've won some criminal cases, and yet I wonder how the DA and the judge and perhaps the police officers, I know that there's been discussions outside of the actual trial. I shouldn't say I know that, I guess. I suspect that it was, okay? And people are found guilty and slapped on the wrist with a minor fine, but they're still guilty. So they can't come back and sue other people, or wrongful use or legal proceedings or whatever it may be. So in a situation like this, to get the New York district attorney, when there's people out on no cash bail, that doesn't mean that they're not letting them out on bail, people. That means that you cannot give this person, they're out without posting anything, not 10%, but nothing. So they're letting those people out, and yet they're wasting time. And because we know why, because before they were elected, that's what they told the people. Hopefully they hope we're going to vote for them. I'm going to prosecute President Trump. I'm going to prosecute him. I don't know what for yet, but I'm going to find something. That's what I'm going to do. Forget about murder, rape, robbery, President Trump. That's all we're going to worry about. So I think once it gets past this first stage, I question if it's going to proceed as you just said, Mike. And I also think it takes some of the bad things that people were thinking about President Trump and throwing them right back in the positive situation. Away we go again, which is fine. I'm happy for that too.
I don't know that people understand that they might be against Trump, but if they are for what's going on, then they're not looking out for their own interests, because perhaps today Trump is the person who is under attack. But if that can happen in this country, then tomorrow it's going to be you or I. Everybody's going to be treated fairly accordingly. And if we don't play by the rules and this is the way things are going to be, it's not going to be the United States of America as we know it. And for a prosecutor to come out there and put something like that in their platform, campaign on that kind of an issue, that's not the way the office is supposed to be held, unfortunately.
Well, that's a nice, intelligent comment. Sadly, many people in this country aren't very intelligent. Joking Joe is the latest I read. Miranda Devine on the New York Post today called him Joking Joe, because he's yucking it up when people were killed there in Tennessee.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
You're right. But I say to my wife often, how can people vote for him? How can people do it? They're not very intelligent, and that's a lot of people in this country. Sadly, they're not using their brain and not thinking. I don't mind if you vote a certain way, but there's no logic, and they just want to say negative things for President Trump for whatever reason, and they have no reason why. And we could go on and on about this with people that vote for Joking Joe, that are Jewish, Catholic, whomever it may be. How they can vote for him, I don't have the foggiest idea. But I can't argue with them anymore because I won't win, and they just don't have it to understand what we're talking about. So.
I voted for him 12 times in the last election.
that was Hillary, I think. That was Hillary.
Oh, her too. Yeah.
And your dead grandma, right?
Right. That's right.
We're joking. We don't want to get kicked
yeah.
off.
Oh, yeah. We're just kidding around.
I think we're going to be censored. Chris, we've got quite a few of our loyal listeners tuning in. Let's give them all a little bit of a shout out. We've got Defiland checking in. Give them a hey now.
Hey now, Defiland. Hey now.
Eric Krebs checking in. Give Eric a hey now.
Eric, hey now.
Dag Nabbit's checking in. Give him a hey now.
One of our all-time favorites, Dag Nabbit, coming at you live. Hey now.
Rusty Shackelford, give him a hey now.
Rusty Shackelford, hey now. Hey now.
How about Amani? Amani's checking in.
Oh, Amani, welcome back. Hey now.
Welcome back. Rita checking in. Give Rita a hey now.
Rita, hey now.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We love the Mike G in the Morning family. So, Jim, I know we had to talk about that because we couldn't get away with not talking about it. It's huge news, not something that you see every day or in the history of a country or anything like that. But we are here to talk about you. Why don't you just briefly tell our audience a little bit about what you do in your law practice?
Well, after an accounting undergraduate degree, I love accountants, love them because they help me out because I don't like it too much myself. I tried it for a while, and that the days were slowly moving. Was it lunchtime yet? No, it's 9:30, and I couldn't do that for the next 40 years. So then proceeded to go on to graduate school and did a lot of MBA work, finished that, did a lot of computer coding, worked at SunGuard, did a lot of mainframe work, JCL, job control language. Underneath the programs you'd use, there's a assembler type language that I would code a little bit and then put the software on. Sitting in Safeguard, I'm pointing to the spot where my head started to hurt from staring at code because I couldn't print out the file dump because it was too much. And I'm the only human in the building, like Hal. I'm dating myself there. So then I did the law school thing while I was doing computer consulting, which was fine. Went to Widener, finished there. Clerked for Judge McEwen on Pennsylvania Superior Court. Wonderful experience there for a year. And then got started in some law firms, Philadelphia, and then Chester County. And then went out on my own. And that's an interesting situation. I think some people and people in large firms would have difficulty doing it because when you're on your own, you got to get your own business. And Mike, you kind of know this, I think. You're not being assigned business from senior partners, or you're not being given business from the large firm that's getting all kinds of phone calls. You're out soliciting business. in my case, I got involved at La Comunidad Hispana out in Kennett, and helps poor people, not only Latinos, but obviously a lot of them out there in Kennett, and helped involved with Project Salud, the health clinic. Nobody did immigration work back in the 90s, like the late 90s. And they would come to La Comunidad to get help. And so I'd help them. So from that, now you end up just starting with the immigration work, then ends up with auto accidents, with sadly some DUIs. Some of them get married. Others are bringing in people legally, as somebody once says, Donald Trump. So a lot of that is legal. And it's funny because I talk to people about that legal, and people that are coming in and DACA, the deferred action for the childhood arrivals. And I say to people, it's actually worse now under Joke and Joe than it was with President Trump and before that even, because I don't know why, but even the applications for runners, professional runners that I bring in, Boston Marathon type runners, spouses, how about renewals of green cards taking over a year? And not for any criminal charges. This is just, we're just not getting around to it yet. And I look into it and away they go. So I would say to a large portion, it is this immigration work that I do. But as I say, I just finished, I'd say a very significant, maybe $500,000 auto accident case, which is very scary on a sole practitioner's budget again, because you need to have those expert witnesses, doctors. They want to get paid up front. And we gladly did that. But you need to pick and choose on those carefully, because it's a lot of money to get money from the insurance companies. You need to show that these damages are real, and the costs that they would incur to correct those damages, to go to the doctors, etc. So it's been very diverse. And one of the things I was doing is obviously in business, looking at contracts, Mike, and you know this, and I see Chris and you in Proper Tire, the NWO for Life shirts, because I got a couple of clients that were on the independent wrestling circuit, and they got contracts for a Canadian federation. I don't recall the acronym, the not WWE or AEW now, but a Canadian. So I looked at the contracts for them, and I told this fellow, oh my God, he had a wrestling school here in Springfield and Blackballed Wrestling Association, and I said, I was a big fan. I started name dropping, Roddy Piper, whomever. And next thing you know, this guy had me backstage at SmackDown and not WrestleMania, but at Monday Night Raw at the in Philadelphia.
Oh, cool.
So I got to meet some of the guys and had some fun. And he said, "Hey, brother," and that's the way he spoke too. He wasn't Hulk Hogan; he spoke that way. "Hey, brother, I put on shows once a month in Springfield and later in Phoenixville. Why don't you come on as a manager, brother? You can be the commissioner of the BWO." And so,
nice.
Seymour Money was born. Make
Seymour
up that name.
Money.
That's pretty good.
They said Munnis Money. So we did that. And then somebody said, how about Seymour Money? And so it made sense.
Nice.
I was the bad guy with the New York Yankees hat, dark suit, dark tie. And, all you morons in Phoenixville, shut up. And what a great living the fantasy. Until I did it for a while. And I was asked to really, I'm not bragging, I wasn't making any money at it. Oh, you got to come to ours in Denver, PA. You got to come to ours to Erie. Bring Seymour with you.
Yeah.
The wrestlers are getting some money. Seymour wasn't going. I didn't see Seymour getting any money listed on that sheet. So
Right.
I said, not yet. And then one time I mentioned to Mike briefly before we got started today, we were ad-libbing something. And when a chair got swung and missed my head by about that much, I decided that's about it for Seymour.
A little too close.
So I gave up my commissioner's role and went back to this the legal life, and it was a lot safer for me, I think. But a lot of
there
fun.
is an art to being able to do that, though, to get out there and play that heel manager, because you have to know what pushes people's buttons. If you go out there and you're trying to be the bad guy and you get no reaction whatsoever, then you're not doing your job. You need people to really hate you.
They were in the audience. There was people in the audience for sure, and it was paid crowds. And I had the microphone, and it wasn't just talking to one or two people. It was screaming on the microphone and shut up and cut the music. All these lines you see, I was using them. One of the guys that I think it might have been one of the guys that was in WWE, Greg Matthews, or one of the boys, said Jim is like he steals all these old lines, and proceeds to use them. I was calling people Daddy-O. That sounds a lot like some of the old time wrestlers. I was stealing a couple Conan lines, and of course telling everybody to shut up, doing my Ric Flair thing.
There you go.
And yeah, you're right. You would kind of pick out guys. And I saw one guy with a Red Sox hat on. So with my Yankees hat, I told him, his girlfriend, I said, honey, why are you hanging with that loser, that bum in the park? You know, he's cursing at me and yelling at me. And, you know, I never used vulgarity up there on the mic, but they shouted at me a few times, which meant good. I guess I was doing well. But it was a great fun. I got to live that life for a while. And I still have some friends in the business, and I still enjoy it as a fan. I really do. I
heard our producer Russ has a clip of this or something. Is that right, Russ? You there?
Oh, yeah. Russ is gonna get the clip on there.
A little grainy, maybe. A little grainy.
Yeah, we'll see. No, that's right. I forgot. Our producer doesn't produce anything. He doesn't have any.
Oh yeah. We're just gonna call him Russ from now on.
Right,
he's no longer Russ the producer. He's just plain old Russ. So Jim, you had talked about bringing in some of those older lines and reintroducing them, and that's very prominent in the pro wrestling business. If you listen to Ric Flair's story, he talks about how he was heavily influenced by a former wrestler and took that character and turned it up to 11. The original Nature Boy, I believe it was.
Yep, Buddy Rogers.
Right. And you see this, not just with him, with a bunch of different people. You sort of pay homage to the older school of pro wrestling by reintroducing things. And you might have audience members who were unfamiliar with that previous generation. And it sort of lives on. Isn't that true?
There's only so much original stuff you can do as far as, moves. And some wrestlers get upset because you used my move. Well, you can call it something different. There's a Frankensteiner, or is it something from the top rope? Still in AEW, this new wrestler MJF, Maxwell J. Friedman, it's kind of a little bit Ric Flair like, as far as a bad guy yelling at the crowd, acting all stuck up and snobbish, and always wearing those Burberry scarves and suits, and going a little over the top, and kind of a lot like Ric Flair. And nobody's really said it yet, but I see it. And you're right. And there's new people that are a lot younger than I am that are enjoying wrestling now, and they're seeing him for the first time. They don't know Buddy Rogers. They might not even know Ric Flair. So it's nice to see it continue, and guys take over and continue it along with the good moves, with the good fun. And a lot of the guys, I have some dear friends, and Dr. Tom Bourne, a dear friend of mine, says, it's not like the old days when, he mentions Ric Flair, Honky Tonk Man, whomever. But there are some that I'm seeing now that are kind of taking it into the 2020s now, and then not having to have all the old guys. Some of the new guys are real good, and some of the women, Dr. Britt Baker and people like that, are excellent female wrestlers, and they're fun to watch. They're good on the stick too. That's important. You can be a great wrestler, but if you're not good on the stick, we always joke about the Steiner math. If you guys have seen that video, we're on YouTube here, so just put in Steiner math, and he proceeds to go on where he's got a 30% chance of winning. But Kurt Angle can't beat him, so that makes him 66 2/3. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's nice to know guys that can do that these days too, and continue the tradition. So it's fun to watch. It's good to see. It's the one sport, I could talk about this forever, Mike and Chris, but it's the one sport where when we used to go to the Spectrum back in the day, we'd go to wrestling. In the front row, there'd be people in mink coats, men in three-piece suits, and then a little bit farther row back would be guys in blue jeans and T-shirts, and
right.
Nobody got in fights. It's not like in a Flyers Rangers game where we're punching each other. You might root for Flair, and I might root for Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. But when it's over, we're just all laughing and remembering the bouts. So it's good times, and it's a good way to escape whatever business you're in. If it's the legal business or if it's a medical business or whatever, to come home at the end of the day and watch a couple hours of pro wrestling on a Wednesday night for me with AEW is a lot of fun. So I enjoy that too to this day.
Yeah, I will say this, and Liberty, if you're there, you can chime in. Some people don't seem to understand the appeal of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And I was watching a bunch of pro wrestling and was telling Liberty about it. And Liberty said something along the lines of, I don't understand how you watch that stuff. It's fake. And I said in response, didn't you tell me that yesterday you watched Shrek 1, 2, 3, and 4? Did you think that was real?
Yep.
It's not real?
Any movie, any movie is a script.
Liberty, we're putting you on trial here. You're going to have to answer for yourself, Liberty.
feel like I just found out about Santa Claus or something.
I can see, for some reason, I can't understand. I can't get in the mindset that it's like a movie. I'm like we know, if everybody knows that somebody's gonna win, like they're like quote unquote faking the fighting. I don't understand it. It's like my brain will not understand it for some reason. I don't know, that it's like it's fake. Like I'm like, wait, can they really get hurt? And I understand, like, yes, they can get hurt. Yes, it's really intense physically, but I can't understand how to get into their characters like a movie, if that makes sense.
Well, it is scripted, but it is real also. I've as I say, I've been there, and I went, well, the mat's like a trampoline. No, I've been in those mats. It's padded for obvious reasons, but it's not like a trampoline. It's a little, it gives a little bit, but it's not a trampoline, and it's scripted, but the injuries are real, and the athletic prowess is real. I'm not trying to convince people to get into it, but if you watch it, there's some of these luchadors from Mexico, these high flying moves. They're doing corkscrew jumps off the top rope, through a table onto the floor, and how they do this. I mean, my wife will tell me, she'll be maybe in the same room, maybe not. If she hears Jim scream out, "Oh my God!" Then she knows somebody did something. Pentagon Zero, or one of the guys, Pentagon Dark, or Ray Phoenix. These guys they are total athletes, which reminds me of Chris Benoit, who I did get to meet. And the sad thing, he was a wonderful athletic wrestler, but a lot of these wrestlers got into steroids. And Chris Benoit came out to say hi to me with the sternest face, and just kind of looked at me. And I talked to him about what a great athlete he was. It was just, and a few days later, he murdered his wife, his baby, and himself.
Oh my goodness.
And I know it was steroids. The other side of that coin was Roddy Piper, who came out, and all he wanted to do was talk about me and where I worked and what I do. And hey, Jim, and we laughed about some things. The guy who was not on steroids. And I know another fellow that died from steroids in the pro wrestling business. Even though he told me, my doctor's regulating this, Jim, don't worry about a thing, because I told him to be careful. So they're great athletes, but some of the ones want to get too jacked. Yeah. But I'm off topic now. I know about the reality of it versus the fakeness of it, but it is real, but it's scripted, and so that's the big difference. And I love the athletic ability. I don't love guys blading themselves and bleeding, and that's not always necessary. But to see some of the athletic ability, Liberty. I mean, that's what I told a friend of mine. He said, "I want to come watch with you, Jim, for maybe 45 minutes. I've never watched it." I said, "I don't want you with me, because you will interrupt when I'm living in a fantasy world for 2 hours on Wednesday. Interrupt me. I just want to be alone." And I said to this friend of mine, "You will not get it because you've never watched it. You don't know. It is like a soap opera that builds and builds and builds. And if I tune in Days of Our Lives tomorrow morning, I won't know what's going on because I've never watched it." But those that do, because, oh yeah, Dr. So-and-so and Mrs. So-and-so, and then they know all the deals. I know all the deals.
My favorite show. Yeah.
So but I do love the athletic ability of it, and I can appreciate it and watch it, and still get into my legal life the next morning without losing any sleep over my team winning or losing. And like the Eagles fans, if the Eagles lose Sunday, they can't go to work on Monday morning. The players can, but the fans can't.
Right.
I find it funny that two highly intelligent attorneys, like, this is their pastime. they're not reading. They're not in the library, folks. They're watching wrestling.
I think you made a good point that it's really downtime. You just get to totally separate yourself from the complexities and seriousness of the law and chill out and relax. So yeah, I get that aspect of it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I got business. I had business from it too. I did the contracts. I'm trying to think of all the other work I've done for the guys, but there's definitely business there, and it's nice to be able to speak their language a little bit and talk about, like say Roddy Piper or Chris Benoit, those situations, or some of the new guys too. So it helps in business. There's no question.
Yeah.
When you said you came out in the New York Yankees hat, was that before or after Paul Heyman was doing that?
I told you I stole things from everybody.
Okay. Just curious, because ECW is very prominent in Philadelphia for a period, right? This is before my time, but
one before mine. I know, and the thing is, I had a Yankees hat. I was supposed to be this Harvard graduate lawyer who acted holier than everyone else, But my budget for clothing was not tremendous for my wrestling attire, so I took what I had. I had a Yankees hat and a Phillies hat, and the dark Yankees hat looked better for this situation. So I put that on with my dark suit, dark tie, and wore my sunglasses all the time. Of course, had to wear those.
Mm-hmm.
I just proceeded to scold everyone, all what morons they were. I thought I was going to be in Phoenix. I ended up in Phoenixville, this dump town, and people, when I stepped outside, I made sure that I was covered by some of those big wrestler buddies of mine. I had good friends,
The Blob was
Oh,
filmed there. The Blob.
right?
That's
the Blob.
great.
Mhm.
Right.
But the Yankees hat is a great touch for if you're playing that heel personality, because who's a bigger heel than the New York Yankees, right?
Oh
They've
yeah, they
got
all
all
hated
these
me.
world championships, and everybody can't stand them because it's no fair. They're the big guy. They're never the underdog kind of thing. So
Well, I
that's
made a mistake. I was dressed like that, and a lot of the guys were good sports. I made the mistake. There was one wrestler that was I think he was in WWE or WCW for a while, Danny Rose, and he had the nickname of Doomsday Danny Rose. Well, I'm new to the game here, so I got the stick in my hands, and I'm trying to use everybody's name, not just like brother. I'm trying to say Danny Rose. So I wanted to say. He said something against me, and I grabbed him like, "Now wait a minute, dangerous Danny Rose," and I went on and on. Well, I didn't even know it. We got backstage into the locker room. I thought he was going to take me out. He says, "My name's not Dangerous Danny Rose; it's Doomsday Danny Rose."
Uh-oh.
So luckily, a couple of those big guys were there because Doomsday was ready to take me out. He was not happy.
That sounds like you actually got his name right.
Oh, I was gonna say I would intentionally mix up the whole name.
Right.
Listen, Dangerous Dave.
You don't look so dangerous to me.
Yeah. Mike,
Just call him the complete wrong name. I
Right,
did that in
right.
high school to a teacher. I had a teacher who wasn't getting along with. His name was Mr. Patterson, so I just called him Mr. Peterson every time I saw it. Just intentionally. That's kind of like a Ric Flair. Like, you're not important enough for me to remember your real name, so you'll be whatever I call you. That sort of thing.
Right.
No.
anybody with the report cards, if he's giving the grades, though, Mike, you should know better than that. He that gives the
I
grades, you got to
can't
be
say
nice
it.
to.
I can't say it was the smartest thing in the world.
I got an F. Wait a second. Hold on a minute.
Well, I got to commend
So,
both
Paul-
you guys, first of all, with these NWO shirts
Oh,
and
thank
hats and everything. That is so good. I'm
This was
I'm
all
full-
Mike. Mike made this
Wearing
happen.
a blazer, I'm sorry, I wasn't in uniform, but I
No,
tried to
it's
look good.
okay.
It's all good.
On part two, you were there. So I do have to tell you that I have a lot of my suits embroidered with the NWO logo on the inside.
Gotta
And
love
I
it.
totally missed the boat because I was getting off of a plane in Houston and I was late to where I was going. And I'm walking through and I see this guy off to the side, and he's wearing like this. The way I could describe it is a Cookie Monster blue jumpsuit, like a bright blue jumpsuit. And I'm like, this guy looks so familiar. And a fat, bald guy. He looks so familiar. And then as I'm walking towards him, I realized this is Paul Heyman.
Oh my.
Paul Heyman in the airport. So I didn't really want to cause a big scene and have people mob him if they weren't bothering him already. So all I did was I said, "Ladies and gentlemen," and he looks up at me and he says, "That is I." And he went back about his business, and that was it. I totally missed the boat, though. I could have went over to him and showed him the NWO
Oh, my
embroidered
God.
suit and everything like that. I said, "Listen, you call yourself the special counsel and the advocate. I'm the real special counsel and the advocate."
That's funny, man. That's funny.
Well, all the time that we all have had maybe run into people like that. Back in the day, we didn't have those cell phones to snap pictures, and don't we all wish we did? We could have had some good memories of Paul Heyman or wrestlers or just individuals. Not to get too. I was in coach when I used to say I look like Joe Biden. When he was governor or senator of Delaware, that wasn't a bad thing necessarily. And I was the first row in coach. He was in first class. Obviously, that's where he was sitting. And I so much wanted to say, look, we really don't look alike, but people say we do. Can I get a picture with you? But there was no cameras then. This is back in the day. So I don't know what I would do with that picture now. I don't want to get too mean and say what I might do with it, but I wouldn't be too proud to have it in my office. I'll just put it that way.
Very true.
From the political side, this isn't necessarily, I guess it might be a hot button political issue, but weren't you involved to some degree with the embassy over in Israel at some point? Was there some kind of involvement with that?
Well, I think a lot of the involvement might be my wanting to be involved. Like,
Oh.
I think I put my name in the hat for the ambassador to Israel. But here's the deal with that. I have many clients who are Hasidic Jewish people, and people told me they can't be your friends. I happen to be of a Christian background. They can't be your friends. They won't like you. Well, I've gone to weddings, and there's this. For those that don't know, there's a Crown Heights, New York, is where heavy ultra Orthodox are. I mean, the Satmars, the Lubavitch, which is Rabbi. He passed away, but the great Rebbe was there, and they thought that he might live forever. And I happen to have a card up there in my office of the Rebbe, right next to my Pope John Paul. I wasn't sure, so I'm covering my bases there. I got to know all these people, and I've been to parties up there in Crown Heights, and I've known a lot of these rabbis, well-to-do rabbis, and then I got to know people in Israel. And I always take the ultra-conservative when I'm on LinkedIn, perhaps just for fun. I'm not sure. I don't want to say that, but I'll take the ultra-conservative approach of Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef, the Sephardic rabbi. And a lot of people have commented like you did, Mike, and just, oh, wow, this is great. And I know a little bit about it, so I can talk about it. And it was nice to be welcomed by these people who have said to me, Jim, you are our friend. You are like family. You are coming to our weddings, and you are, so I felt good. So no, I'm not involved. I'm still young enough, I think, maybe if Donald Trump gets reelected, either ambassador to Ireland or Israel, one or the other. I'm not sure. My wife would probably say Ireland. But
Very nice.
Maybe I'm living in a dream world, and I probably am. So I'll just stop talking about that. He asked me how many times have you gone at one of the weddings? How many times have you been to Israel, Jim? I said, I've never been to Israel. Oh, because they all have these aliyah, I guess, where you can go back. Yeah, if you're of Israeli descent, you get a free trip. I think it's still in the books. They were shocked. And I got to tell a few of them, well, here's why. But I still got invited back, so it was nice. So that's how that worked, Mike, just through my contacts and friends here and meeting friends over in Israel also.
Did they just presume you were one of them? Is that what was going on?
Yeah. No question about that. On LinkedIn, I think they do, yeah. So, I try to sound like he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. He's yeah. I said this to one of my friends. I said, Devori, well, maybe your husband and you and my wife and I, we can all go to Israel together. And she said, well, Jim, that would be okay, but you'll be getting up 3 times a night with Tivia to daven, to pray. And morning prayers are like 5 a.m, and then noon prayers, and then evening. I said, maybe we won't go together. I don't think I'll be invited. It's a bit. I love to pray. I'm praying, but no,
maybe we'll go to Rehoboth Beach or something instead, right?
Yeah, we were all laughing. So that's some good sports about it. Good sports.
That's funny. You mentioned Crown Heights. Have you ever been to Borough Park in Brooklyn?
Oh yes, it's all around there. I spent several days there. When I go to the wedding, I spent a couple of days just kind of walk around and Uber around. You can't walk in some places. It's even though it's short enough to walk, you wouldn't want to. But Borough Park and all around the island, really. Although I hang around mostly Crown Heights just because of my Lubavitch and getting some good food there too. But been around all of Brooklyn, really, all of Brooklyn area. Yeah, have you been there, Mike? Sounds like you've been to Borough Park.
I was raised in Brooklyn, so I was well known over there. Are you from New York originally?
Yes, but upstate, as we called it, Syracuse, for my first 10 years. Still a big Syracuse Orange sports fan, basketball, but didn't get to Syracuse. There's a little too liberal school for my mother and father. So St. Joseph's they allowed. They could live it up at St. Joe's. But so I had been in New York. That's maybe another reason for the Yankees hat. But as I said, not New York City, and hadn't spent too much time there. So I was thrilled to get a chance to be up there numerous times and go to some special meetings and special discussions up in Crown Heights and Borough Park. Yes, the Satmar sect, I think, is up there around Williamsburg and around that neck of the woods, which is not too far.
Now, New York is, even if you're in upstate, you're still unfortunately subject to the laws of the People's Republic of New York. Did you say that your parents were not liberal?
I'm sorry, they weren't Hebrew?
Liberal. They were not liberal, your parents?
No, especially my father. Yeah, I'm a lot like he was, and I've stayed that way. And as we were saying, you're also subject to the taxes. I see properties for sale in the Catskills or in the Finger Lakes. Oh, what a deal! 50, 60 acres. Taxes are unbelievable.
Mhm. It's crazy.
So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but no, they were on the conservative side, and
So when
think
you were
I've stayed
10,
that way.
you guys escaped? Is that what happened? Did you have to get an immigration lawyer to get out of the People's Republic of New
Right.
York?
well, it's kind of like crossing from Monterey into Texas or Arizona. I just crossed over to Pennsylvania and didn't go too far. I lived in Sharon for a while, which is the western side, and that was interesting. Talk about the old steel mills, and this was in the late '60s. I was there, and even then they were out of business and closed. Youngstown, Ohio, was just across the line, and what a desert area that was, and just terrible. Sharon Steel was shut down. Westinghouse was there. My father was with Westinghouse. That got closed down. So that then came to this neck of the woods, Delaware County, Chester County, and I've been here ever since, other than a short stay in Pittsburgh, which I got back as soon as I could. Yeah. But we love Pittsburgh.
What did
I don't
Dad
say
do
that
for a
no.
living?
He was with Westinghouse. We got involved. I got involved with him a little bit, and he was involved in sales, but not so much, selling things like shoes or something. He was selling like large steam turbine generators, power transformers,
Cool.
all the power generation equipment that we hear about even today with companies, GE and others, with nuclear plants, turbine gen. We see the big towers at Eddystone. If you drive to the airport, it's pumping out steam or smoke. That's what generates the electricity, which also generates the electricity for the electric cars that are being plugged in. Mike,
Right, of
show.
course. Yeah,
I'm not sure. Maybe you want to wait for another show for that.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so he was involved in that for a lot of years and became district manager in the whole Megillah. And so we came down here, and I stayed, let's just say, for college. It was I probably could go to St. Joe's or Villanova. I probably could have gone to Holy Cross if I really wanted to, but Syracuse was out, and all those Ivies, no, they're too liberal. No. So St. Joe's worked out quite well, and I got a lot of friends even to this day from St. Joe's. So when you get old like I am, to have friends that you've had since college or since high school, that's pretty rare. And I have a few from St. Joe's that I'm still very friendly with. So that's
awesome.
nice said. Yeah. Although even St. Joe's, I will tell you, they're kind of getting very woke also. And some of the people that are collecting for St. Joe's, they put she, her on their LinkedIn. I don't know, but Dr. Barry Bourne, another friend of mine, said, "What are you doing? You're from St. Joe's. You're putting she, her on your LinkedIn website and asking me for money." And they want to let certain people speak. This is supposed to be a Jesuit institution. The Jesuits were always allowing a lot of things, including the conservative people that want to speak. So to not let someone like that speak, people like that at St. Joe's, I'm very disappointed in St. Joe's. And a lot of my colleagues that also graduated from St. Joe's think the same way. So it's sad. I can't speak for Villanova, but it's disappointing that these institutions are getting the same way, very woke, as you boys both said. Everybody's getting that way. And hopefully we're starting to turn the other way back. I hope we are.
I mean, we've got no choice. How much further can it get where, these institutions are supposed to be bastions of free thought, and it's the complete opposite. It's you shall comply. And if you have any thoughts that are not in lockstep with our agenda, then you'll just be silenced. Tulsa Law will not get $1 from me for the rest of my life unless there's a serious change over there. I went to law school in Oklahoma, and you think Oklahoma, you don't think woke or anything like that. But the law school, itself has done some pretty anti-free speech sort of things.
It'll get a lot worse.
It will get a lot worse. That's true. I can't deny
although
that.
some of the, I think I saw something before he came on. There was some weightlifter.
I saw that.
Just identified himself as female, and he's shattering all these records. Right. I don't think he thinks he's a woman really, but he said he was to identify as one to get in, and he's destroying all the female records. And of course, the swimmer at Penn was the same way, and he or whatever you want to call him was an average swimmer as a man, and I guess swam in college, and good for him at the time to swim college sports. But then decided he wanted to win, so went as a woman, and all of a sudden now the women are saying, well, this isn't right. And if you're born biologically male, you can't identify as a female for sports. Funny how they weren't thinking that 3 and 4 years ago, were they?
Yeah, it's
They
really
wanted-
destroying female, women's
Yes.
sports. Yeah.
Absolutely, the disgrace and the records that have lasted for years being shattered like that by men that are identifying as females.
I mean, it was really unwatchable before anyway, so at least now it'll totally get destroyed. But
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's true though.
It's all-
no. It's
It's all a conspiracy to
Right.
The WNBA. How much of a WNBA game have you watched? 10 minutes? I haven't watched 10 minutes. I've tried. I can't do it.
No.
There's a
If they're shooting
WNBA.
I'm impressed when they're shooting free throws. They're usually real good. Other than free throws, not so good. But I mean, it's.
I prefer Wonder Woman actually.
Oh, there we go.
There.
Linda Carter. If I'm old enough to remember Linda Carter as Wonder Woman.
She was
So
good. She was good.
I
Yeah.
fond memories of Linda Carter.
Mhm.
That's all I want to say about that.
That's why I'm using the mug tonight.
Unfortunately, the people who do come out in opposition of any of that, and I'm not even talking about guys like us, because clearly none of us are competing in women's swimming anytime soon. So at the end of the day, what skin do we have in the game? But if you have these female swimmers who are in college and do have to compete against these biological males who have already gone through male puberty and have a clear advantage, if they come out and say something, they're dubbed a hateful person and they're transphobic. And there's all these other different terms that they throw at them, which really defies reality that you're not able to speak up about that. But that seems to be the world that we live in today. We're seeing a crazy incident in terms of what happened over in Tennessee, because it's not just a Second Amendment issue like we typically see in the aftermath of these. Being a Second Amendment attorney, this is something you're dealing with anytime one of these things happens. You've got these people who come out and they want more gun control, and they don't know what the present gun laws are, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And they propose a bunch of laws that already exist. And really the end goal is to disarm the people. But this is not as cut and dry as these other ones in terms of what you expect to see, because you've got a convergence of religion, right? Because it was an attack on a Christian school that was inside of a church. You've got the transgender issue, which you see a lot of the mainstream media. You don't see them do this with other mass murderers, but they're talking about how this shooter had a really tough life and the transgender community is under attack. And to whatever degree that is happening, if people are going out there and harassing transgender people because of this incident, meaning other transgenders who didn't do anything wrong, not the people who went in there and it's like, hey, what are you bothering me for? I didn't go in there and shoot up the school. Then what's happening is really very similar to what happens to gun owners in general after these things, because the gun community gets attacked and it's like, hold on a second. I'm a law-abiding gunner who did nothing wrong, yet I'm going to be punished for this. And somehow the mainstream media fails to recognize that. But it's very important to them in terms of this transgender issue. You've got the police issue, right? Because you hear a lot of defund the police on the left and everything like that, and they responded very quickly and dealt with it, unlike what happened over in Texas with that school shooting. That was an absolute disaster. So there seems to be like 5 or 6 different issues all in one for this thing. It's not your conventional I don't want to say a conventional shooting because that's terrible, but it's different than any situation that I think we've ever seen. Would you agree, Jim?
Well, I would, and I don't think the press knew how to handle it because they were all set to go with this. Somebody murdered a white person murdered people at school. Wait a minute, it was a transgender person. Whoops! Now let's talk about gun control now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We can't talk about white or black, which that's like I said, that's how you keep people apart, by keep bringing it up all the time. And so they didn't know what to do. And the police got involved. The police shot some. Should they have shot some? Oh, we can't say they shouldn't. I think the press didn't know how to act. They really didn't know how to act this one, unlike the one in Texas, which they just went crazy,
Yeah.
But so all in all, it's And as a bird hunter, I've hunted deer in the past, and I got one, so I checked it off my list. But I mean, as a person that owns guns, you're right. People criticize, and they should, automatic weapons. We can even talk about that, or the guns that they use. They're basically just hunting. They use those for hunting in Texas, by the way, and in other states too. They're basically
Sure.
semi-automatic with some modifications. But the people, as you said, Mike, they badmouth hunting, they badmouth. Of course, they'll hit a deer next year if we don't hunt deer, but they don't think about that. And I don't think these criminals and these bad people are concerned that it's a gun-free zone, or that it's you're not allowed to buy arms. They're getting these arms. I've seen it down in Philadelphia too, where these arms are available, perhaps illegally, but you should be allowed to purchase guns. But they still make us the bad guy here, and that really should change. And and they say, well, if you see something, say something. But if you do say something about someone like this transgendered person, it's like, well, how dare you phobic person,
Right?
Say something bad about this woman who just wants to live her life, and you're saying she shouldn't own a gun. She has every right to own a gun, just like you do. Well, we see what happened. We should have some sort of situation where if people do make comments about it, they can't be held against them for making comments. If they make them privately to the police or to some sort of reporting agency, for people that you think are perhaps a little shaky as far as owning guns, as far as being mentally stable, and not being charged with some sort of slander or libelous action because you said it to the reporting agencies like the police. They want you to, so let's let people do that without ramifications.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation. It's almost like with after 9/11, if you see something, say something. But could you imagine going to report, hey, I think this Middle Eastern guy with the backpack is doing something fishy? There's no winning in that situation. I mean, unless the guy's actually got a bomb in the backpack. Do you want to risk being wrong in that situation? That's tough, right?
Yeah, I bet people are saying less, for the reasons you just mentioned. Yeah.
And afraid of what will happen if
come off as prejudice, I think.
Yeah, they'll can't try to cancel you and accuse you of this and that. All of a sudden, you're totally an anonymous person. Then you're all over the news the next day, for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
Jeremy Miller says to ban guns because criminals use them is to tell the law-abiding that their rights and liberties depend not on their own conduct, but the conduct of the guilty and lawless. That's 100% correct. Hit the nail right on the head.
Well stated, yeah.
Hit the nail right on the head. Jim, I got to ask you this. It sounds like you had a career in a number of different things before you became a lawyer. Did you know that you had some kind of interest in the law when you were growing up?
No, I think I saw it in business. I mean, my father wasn't a lawyer. My mother wasn't a lawyer. I didn't have any brother that was a lawyer. But when I got involved in business, I saw contracts. I saw, me going to people, either corporate lawyers or outside, saying, hey, how can I word this termination letter? How can I word this contract? How can I write this letter so I don't get in trouble with perhaps vendors, etc.? So I started at it that way. And then with the MBA, it was kind of just the next step. Kind of still worked, and then I saw that's again sitting in that room at SunGuard or sitting in that room at financial planning. I knew that I had to do something like that, and it just made sense to me that I wanted to get involved in it then. But I did not really have any family experience, which Mike, that first couple of courses on legal ethics or some of the courses in the first year. Some of the people that are paralegals, they already know all the answers. They know how to do shepherdizing, which you don't do anymore. You just use it online. But they knew all this because they were legal clerks. I knew nothing. So you had to hit the ground running there. But no, I didn't. But I think in business, like I said, in seeing all these situations, when I was controller of corporations or doing computer consulting kind of on my own, I still needed contracts, agreements for Asea Brown Boveri, companies like that I was working for and with. I just said, why should I pay for someone to do that? I want to do that myself and just go to law school. So I did. Cool. I'm glad I did. Unlike a lot of people, I don't hate it, and I'm having this breakdown. I can't wait to get out of this job. I absolutely, truly enjoy it. and would like to continue, obviously, for many more years with my health, and I hope it's for many more, as the Jewish friends say, to men, not to 120 necessarily, but for many more years, because as you know, Mike, you help people out too. That also makes you feel good, and I do a lot of that. I do some work at St. Agnes Church, just kind of help out some of the poor people. I said La Comunidad Hispana. If they can pay me some money, good. Sometimes they can't. You obviously you want to get paid, but you have to help out people sometime, and I don't turn that down. I will say that I don't turn that down.
Do you speak Spanish?
I used to say, I actually, before I broke my leg playing soccer when I finished my clerkship with Judge McEwen in my late 30s. So I missed interviews. So what I did for years, I taught preschool to the Rural Opportunities Migrant Head Start children, none of them that spoke English. Wow. So I said, I'm getting pretty good at Spanish. I said, I'm kind of fluent. My daughter said, yes, Dad, you're fluent at about a 5-year-old level. Toys and movies and stuff like that. That's true. But sadly, I don't use it every day. I just had 2 Latino men in my office earlier today. I was speaking Spanish with them. If I can control that conversation, I'm really good. If I don't know where the conversation is going to go, they have to speak very slowly. I say, very slowly, and they still don't speak slowly, but I'd say fair, Mike, fair. Okay.
That's funny with the young kids, because it's like, okay, well, I can only count to 10 in Spanish, but they can't count beyond 10 in Spanish either. So awesome. Perfect.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I've had those 8, 9, 10-year-olds act as translators between me and their mother or father sitting on the other side of my desk here. And I tell those children and their parents, I don't know if you know what a skill you have. You see Mr. Munnis, not so good in Spanish, and it speaks English. You see your mother doesn't know any English and she speaks Spanish. You are fluent in both languages at age 9.
Right.
Don't give up your English. Don't give up your Spanish. And you have, think of the job offers for children in sales and marketing and business and translating and in corporate life. They
really should teach it here at a younger age, like several languages. It'd be so easy to learn it.
Yeah. Especially Spanish. I agree. I mean, if you want to take German and Yiddish, whatever you want to take, but certainly Spanish is so prevalent in this neck of the woods that I think I'm glad that at least I'm able to at least get through a conversation with people, and it helps when clients come in. I will admit that they like that. And I say, I'm sorry. Oh no, Mr. Munnis, you're so good. They say in Spanish. I'm not, but they like that the effort is there, just as I appreciated them when I speak in the present tense. I know I do. And like we watch these shows. I go to the store yesterday. Well, that's the way that I probably speak Spanish. So I don't mock anyone for speaking English. Melania Trump, want to get back on this for a minute? Mocking her, a woman that spoke, 8 languages, I think it was, or 6?
Right, yeah. Right.
I mean, and because what an accent. She speaks 8, dude. What do you speak? Maybe you speak 1. So I have no mocking for any Latino man or woman that speaks English with an accent and mispronounces words or whatever, because I do the same thing in Spanish when I talk back to them. I know it.
Yeah, certainly. It makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Yeah.
And Jim, do you do wills? Because that's something that people call us for all the time, out of our wheelhouse. And it doesn't seem like there are a bunch of attorneys out there who do a whole lot of those these days. And, that's really something that everybody needs, right?
It is. And it's tough I've sent out, the answer to your question is yes. And I've done a lot of estate work. I have several matters in court now. And it's sad when people die. I don't want dad's money, mom's money. When dad dies, they're contesting the will, or they're doing things they shouldn't do. If they're executor selling a house to their son or daughter for $100,000 less than they should, don't bother to ask any of the other beneficiaries. So I try to do my wills with questionnaires, so I know what you want to happen to your items. Perhaps specific bequests, perhaps money going to a charity and the remainder going to your beneficiaries. Perhaps if your daughter or son die, not to their spouse but to their children, to the daughter and son's children. Perhaps that. To keep it in the family, so to speak. We hate to speak down to marriages, but people do think that way, especially for the first few years of marriage, and get the children. So I do that, and I will say, Mike, many times people call me for these little questionnaires, and I say, well, it's only about 1 page. It just wants to know who the beneficiary is going to be and any specific bequests, and I'll get it right out to you. I get it out to them. And that's the last I hear from him because it's so easy just to say, put it on the back burner and they'll get to it. So I just finished up a couple. And,
so many people do that, yeah.
Yeah, but I finished up a few just a couple days ago, and people got to it. I had a few more call me today. So the answer is yes, but I also, as I say, don't try to do just a generic thing, but do what they want. And if you want to give your watch to your grandson, make sure it's worded right, where if you sell that watch and buy another watch, he gets the watch, not, sorry, you sold your Rolex, you bought something else, so you get nothing.
Right.
Or he gets $10,000, there's $9,000 left the estate, he gets nothing. Yeah. So,
That's
but yeah, I do
wild.
that, and I'm seeing people more and more coming back, and you do the will, and you ultimately end up doing the estate also when the person passes away. And when you do it right, there's not much contesting.
So a couple of things about that. Number one, unfortunately, a lot of people seem to wait until it's too late because nobody's planning on dying next Thursday, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And
also,
sometimes these things get put on the back burner.
You need to have this be able to of the right mind for it, or you're of a able mind. Lucent intervals. Do you know what's going on? I have taped wills that I've changed when the man might have been in his 80s or a woman in her 90s. Bring the court reporter in and tape it and have witnesses and make sure we're talking about what day's today. Well, today's opening day and the Phillies are getting started and Joe Biden did this or President Trump was indicted. Here's a copy of the New York Post. And you do that so when people say this person wasn't even coherent, Judge. Really, Judge? Let's play this stick that I taped when he did the will. We talked about who's the weather person on Channel 3 and what are the Phillies. So the person is having coherent moments. If they wanted to write somebody out of the will and give it to somebody else, they knew what they wanted to do and they can do it. It's their goods or their dollars. So, but you don't want to have it be a situation where they're in the hospital in a coma or in a nursing home, unable to think properly, and it's too late then. And I've been through a couple close calls with that, and had to ask a lot of questions to get a notary confident to sign, because the notaries won't sign if the man's not of sound mind or the woman's not of sound mind. So you're right, you can't really wait, and it's not expensive. I mean, if someone's trying to rip you off more than $150, let's say, for a simple will, I'd say you're going to get a raw deal. And to make changes, it's on my computer. So if you change things, I'm not going to charge you another $125. I'm going to charge less because it's right here. So everyone should have it, especially if you have children, for goodness sakes. And even if you don't, you should, because otherwise your parents are going to take. They might not want it. They have their finances settled. Maybe they do want it, but maybe they don't. But you can, if they want it, you can put them in your will. If they don't, you can word it accordingly. So you're right. That's a good point. Make sure they get it updated, and it's not a big problem. It's not costly. And then some people think, well, the courts hold the will. No, they don't hold the will. They only get the will when you die if we probate the will. So you can keep it in your safe deposit box, in your dresser drawer, in your desk drawer. I have a couple of wills that people want me to keep, but for whatever reason, but I don't like to do that. I prefer they keep the originals. If you try and probate a copy, the will is deemed revoked or changed by the courts unless you can prove beyond that reasonable doubt otherwise. Because it makes sense, because you have a copy of my will, I then tear it up and say, now I change everything. And then when I die, you go to the court and say, here's Mr. Munnis's copy of his will. He leaves me everything. Well, Mr. Munnis may have changed his will 4 or 5 times subsequent to that. And unless you can prove that I hadn't or that I didn't, a copy will not work. So I prefer the individual keep the original will. And then if they were to die, their heirs could contact me and probate it accordingly.
Wow. That's something else. So I think that there's a couple of things with that. Number one, I had a friend, unfortunately, he had not got around to making a will. His wife got real sick, so they made it a priority to get her a will. And long story short, he ended up passing away unexpectedly without a will. And, she ended up beating her illness, thank God. And so he was not planning on dying, and it happened. And I always looked at it from sort of a conservative viewpoint, that if you don't have your own will, then the government decides where your stuff goes because it's determined by way of statute. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. Now,
Yeah,
quite
so
often,
you're letting
quite
the
often
government make the choice.
it may be similar in that you can't really write out your spouse to get nothing, but for intestate laws, which is intestates without will, they will get, I think it's 30%, and then do they have children? Yes. If yes, the children take, and the spouse takes. If no, then the parents may take. So it goes up and down the scale depending on if the children are born. And that may be what you want, but A, for specific bequests, or B, just to make sure there's a guardian for the children or a trustee. You don't want to give a 16-year-old, I mean, pick a number, 200,000, a million, whatever you want to use, 100,000, 50,000. You want to give that to a 16-year-old. That if that guy would buy a Corvette, find some gorgeous, single girl and go to Vegas and blow it all there. Maybe great fun, but I'd rather have the guardian or the trustee saying, Mr. Munnis, if you're the trustee, can I have the money to go to Las Vegas with this gorge? No, you may not. Mr. Munnis, I just got accepted to Harvard. May I have? Yes, you may. Mr. Munnis, I'm sick. Let me write the check. So for health, so you put that in the will, what it's for. I know one person said their children could have a new car every year, and that's fine. But you want it to be what you want, not, as you said, Mike, not what the state decides for you. It's not a big deal to do it. It really isn't, and it's changeable throughout the years. So I hope everybody lives a long life, but you're talking about dying and doing wills that way. But you want to work it, even though you are young, as your friend sadly, is an example of, and I hope it was what they wanted, but it may not have been. So you can't also, let me just quickly say, I don't know how much time we have left, but if we're talking about animals, you can't, there's something called a precatory request. You can't say, well, Chris gets my 6 cats. Well, Chris might not want my 6 cats.
I'll take them.
Yeah, okay. But the only way that you can really follow that is if I talk to Chris about this beforehand and say, I've spoken to Chris and he's going to take my cat, my horse, my dog. Recently just lost my dog, sadly, but that was in our will and discussed with my daughter, who was going to take our terrier. And then when he got older, 15, 16, my daughter's out in California. I didn't want Tycho to fly out there. So my sister was kind enough to say she will take Tycho. And so it was worded properly. So if you have pets, don't forget your pets either, or your horses. They're not pets really, but you know what I mean. Any wildlife or animals or farm animals you may have. What's going to happen to those animals when you die? That should be in there also.
It's a very good point. Are you able to do wills for people all over Pennsylvania? Do they have to meet you in person? So if like somebody's listening and they live in Pittsburgh, let's say, can they get a will from you?
I certainly can help them. There's others that do it other than I, but I'd be happy to do it because I can have them fill out my checklist. I can send Mike taking off a shirt. I'm losing Chris. I got I lost. Wow.
Welcome to the gun show.
Feel a little warm here myself seeing that. But,
hey now.
But I can send them my checklist. They can fill it out. And I don't need to be the witness. We could just put down 2 witnesses, leave that blank, and then have the notary notarize it in Pittsburgh, as you said, or wherever they're from, Mike. And it could be effectuated without me even having to be there, really. So if they needed me, although there are local people that do it, I'm not saying I'm the only one. But if somebody wanted me to do it,
you got to tell them the website.
That's right, munnislaw.com. It's easy enough. Yeah, Munnis. There it is, right there, right? They're my name.
LAW. If you're listening over the airwaves on WFYL, MUNNISLAW.com. Don't let the government decide where your stuff goes because they're not very good at anything.
No. And if it's done right, it'll be followed. There's no question. If somebody doesn't, you can easily challenge that in court. Have
you dealt with disputes in court? Do you litigate those kinds of things?
Oh, yes. And I tell people when we're doing wills, I can think of 3 or 4 I did where we don't need daddy's money. We all have Chesapeake home vacation homes. We don't need dad's money. Then dad dies. The next question is, how dare dad give $10,000 to a caregiver? This man had a lot of money. All of a sudden they wanted dad's money. Or another one with much less money. Hi, sis. I took the house in Delaware County, Clifton, or Lansdowne, Alden, or wherever it was. And I sold it to my son, your nephew, for $100,000. I know the house is worth $250,000. You don't mind, do you? Or, Judge, Mr. Munnis says there was no money in his client when our parents died, but I know that mommy always saved $10,000 in an envelope. There's no cash there, so she's litigating it that way. Also, not wanting a certain person as the guardian when it was listed that way. These people go to court, taking full advantage of dad and not having the will notarized properly because dad might not have been coherent enough for the will. So there's no notary. These are things that happen, and you end up in court for this. And so what I try and do is make sure that that's eliminated by, as I said a few minutes ago, doing things like let's videotape this man before we get him to sign his will to make sure he is coherent and he's of that lucid intervals when he knew what he was doing. So, but sadly, there are some people, and we read in the news about this also with rich individuals challenging the will or challenging dad's will or whomever it may be, because all of a sudden the children that might have been gone for years are now back and they're interested in the estate now, boy.
I have a question. What about people do you think makes them change their mind? Like if they can talk about it all day long when the person's alive, why do you think that they have that knee-jerk reaction? Like if somebody sells the house, like, wait a second, I did want that. How come they change their mind? Have you seen anything?
Well, yeah, I think it's money talks and you know what walks, the BS walks. And it's easy to say, I don't need it. I have plenty of my own, I have my own business. I have my own shore house. But then when that money is available, start thinking about it. And they're the family. And that woman that took care of dad, she probably influenced him. And I actually had someone say, I know that they had sex. Dad was like 90 something and couldn't get out of bed. And the caregiver, she loved him like a dad and took good care of him. But there was nothing like that, Jim, she told me. I believed her. But the children all of a sudden wanted that $10,000 out of the will, and they were very interested all of a sudden. Well, again, I pulled out the videotape and I won that protest also. But I think when the money is there, Liberty, that they know that money's there and somebody's going to get it, and it might as well be me. So that's why they fight it.
Right. Does it get more complicated in our country because now our country's divorce rate is so high? Do you think it gets much more complicated with divorces and things like that, or does that play a factor?
Well, I think yes, because a lot of times the child may be of one parent. Tom Brady, for example, now he's got plenty of money, but I mean, he's got a child. Everybody knows him, I guess. He's got a child with one woman and two with another woman. So when they were married, the wife may say, well, your ex-wife should take care of this guy too, or my little son, or my little daughter, or my stepdaughter. So maybe that should be how that works, and not the full amount. Or the situation where, I had my wife in as my beneficiary and now I'm divorced. And so I have to change that. So there have to be a lot of changes in that regard, in that you had the will where if I die, everything goes to my wife. If she dies, everything goes to me. If you're not married to that woman or that man, that should be changed quickly, I think. Because if not, she would get it or he would get it in the will, if they're named accordingly. And so hopefully you have a great relationship with your ex, if you have an ex out there, but you necessarily wouldn't want him or her taking all your assets. So you make your changes that way. As far as fighting over money, I think that as long as I've been around, I've seen that from beginning of my career till very recently.
Isn't it true, Jim, too, if you said beneficiary, is it a financial institution that supersedes the will itself, right?
Well, if there's named beneficiaries in insurance policies or IRAs, 401ks, you're right. The named beneficiary on that would take the will. Doesn't have anything to do with that.
Okay, gotcha.
However, some of the investment accounts don't have named beneficiaries because the state wants to tax it. Like, there we go again with the government. So if you can't name a beneficiary in just like a brokerage account. So when I die, any stocks I may have in my own name just go into my account, my estate. And whoever I name in my estate takes, they pay their taxes accordingly. So, but you're right. If it's named beneficiaries, saying in my will, everything goes to Chris. That would not trump any life insurance policy or IRA 401k.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
We have a listener.
Free legal advice.
Yeah, this was good. Up here.
The personal question.
Yeah.
Hey, who said it was free? Jim's going to send them a bill at the end.
On an NWO shirt. NWO shirt. That's all I'm asking for. That's all.
Yeah, if you could define
per stirpes and per capita and also tertiary.
That's like a legitimate question. Everybody's
Go ahead.
No,
Per
it sort of was.
stirpes?
But yeah, per
Per
stirpes, per
stirpes, go ahead.
capita, and
There's-
tertiary, right?
when you have heirs or beneficiaries, and a lot of these terms now we've changed that term to use English words, but per stirpes would be if I leave it to my son and my son predeceases me, then it goes to my son's heirs. If that makes any sense.
Isn't it like by the?
I mean, it goes to my son. If my son dies,
then
then it goes to his children. Now, per capita would be, I have 3 children. If one dies, I have 2 children per capita. The term per capita, I think we understand that probably more than per stirpes, because what's the per capita tax rate or the per capita annual income, whatever it may be. But so per capita, who's living? And the other one was what? I'm sorry.
I think that was it.
Tertiary beneficiaries.
Tertiary.
Tertiary.
There might be a contingent beneficiary.
third,
Would be
yeah,
like
like
a
the
second
third,
contingent.
second.
You would
Primary,
say
secondary, and
like
tertiary.
secondary. You'd say contingent. If he dies or is unable to act as my agent, then my contingent beneficiary, my contingent executor is so and so. Tertiary would, as I see Mike and Chris both saying, third. Yes, third. So per stirpes and per capita, I think I explained it. Per stirpes, just to make that clear, it goes down the line. It goes to my beneficiary, my son, my daughter. If they die, it goes to their children down the line. They're beneficiaries down the line.
That's interesting. So let's say somebody's leaving a gun collection and they've got 3 kids and they want it to be per capita. Then if one of the kids dies, then it's whoever's left over.
You could even word it though.
collection.
It doesn't have to be. You can word it to say, my gun collection goes to my son, so and so. If my son predeceases me, then my gun collection goes to my son's daughter or son.
Right. So it doesn't have to say per stirpes.
Right.
It could.
So it doesn't
could be
automatically go to
regular.
them, or doesn't automatically go to the son's wife, who might not like guns or who might like guns, but you want it to stay in the Munnis family or whomever it may be. And
Sure.
gee, if I died, my wife might get remarried, and so it goes straight down to my son. So people do it that way, and that's okay, especially with family heirlooms such as that. That's not critical of any spouse. It's just keeping it in a certain family line.
And I guess per stirpes could actually legitimately open you up to some liability if some other people in your bloodline just suddenly showed up. Maybe that's not a bad thing necessarily, but legally,
Well,
that would
it
give
will,
them
especially
right.
when people get older.
Right.
If per stirpes and my son I'm 90, my son's 70. Is he still alive? Maybe maybe not. Are his children still alive? Hopefully, but maybe not. I mean, like I say, you talk about wills, you're talking about dying and everybody's dying.
Right.
You have to. And so per stirpes there would be perhaps my son's daughter's son, what I mean? It goes down the line, and it could be somebody that maybe you haven't had any contact with.
That's what I was getting at, right?
Yes,
all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, I figured out in the DNA thing here that
you're in the will.
You're
You're named in the will." Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Now, that wouldn't.
I
that
always
wouldn't
thought that. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that wouldn't necessarily be my will. It would go to my son. And they say, "Oh, then an estate for your son is open." So we'll see what his will says, and it might say something different. It might say it all goes to the SPCA or something, But that's very complicated, and obviously we're getting convoluted there. But you're right. You want to make it clear in your will, certainly who takes, as your heirs do also, especially if they have. There we go again in this example, Chris. They have children, so
right.
we were telling them get that will straightened out yourself for your children's sake. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it happen to people like that. Said, yeah, it's crazy.
We've always heard that per stirpes can be a problem. I just thought they had a medication for it. I don't know.
It's an injection now.
You don't want to get the per stirpes,
Right. It's for life too.
It's for life. We had one of our listeners wrote in, Jim, and said, have you ever had anybody have any eccentric wills, strange things in the will? Like if I leave $1,000 to my friend for letting me for letting me park my car at his house for 20 years, as an example. Have you ever had any strange things in the will?
Well, not that. I've had money left for the caring of dogs and cats, which you'd think about it. It's nice that someone's going to take the dog or cat, but there's going to be expenses involved in
Right.
caring for that animal. And it might be substantial if the animal gets older, is going to the vet a lot.
Mhm.
I also have had, when doing a living will, which is also known as like that healthcare power of attorney, like, do you want extraordinary measures taken if there's no likelihood of survival and you're just going to be a vegetable? You don't want tube feeding? I have had people, more than one, they want everything done possible to keep their life alive, keep themselves
Wow.
alive, I should say.
Oh my goodness.
Which is fine. Now they weren't 90, they were, in their 30s, and they said, there might be something in Mexico or in China, some sort of medication that I could take, and I want my agent in this case to look into that before the doctor pulls the plug.
Oh wow.
And I respected that and put it right in there. It's not me telling them this is the way you have to do it. I gave them the options. This is not because you go in for a hangnail. This is because there's no likelihood of recovery in your doctor's reasonable medical certainty. And he tells you, the agent, you say, okay, let's not give him tube feeding. Let's give him medicine that may quicken his death but ease his pain. These individuals said, no, I want, that's true. That's what morphine does, really. It eliminates the pain, but it quickens your death. It does.
I have a pact with Mike G to take me to the Grand Canyon and push me off the edge in that situation.
They say it's like drowning.
Video recording in court.
Peaceful. It's peaceful for a while, then it gets unpeaceful.
Chris, that's odd. Chris, that is video evidence now.
That's right. That's why I did it on the air.
Video
Video evidence. Right.
Oh,
To everyone in the room right now, I'm being serious.
It wasn't me. Didn't somebody have that pact with Epstein? Apparently, no.
Oh yeah, apparently, right. Seriously.
Do we have those T-shirts going around yet? He did not kill himself, Mike. Do you have those shirts for sale on MG.com?
Not yet. That's a good idea,
to do
though,
that,
right?
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton had a death pact with Jeffrey Epstein, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't need to.
Right. Just
I
joking
know
around.
The way Chester County's going now, I wonder if I'm digging my own grave talking like this, because there's too many Democrats in there anyway. But you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
No, I think it's great to speak out. I
I hear you. I hear you,
that.
Chris. I hear you. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I've had those early on in my career. I had those thoughts because we do live in a world that it could impact your business and the way people treat you, the way the government treats you. We've seen targeted campaigns by the government, whether it's the IRS or otherwise. But very quickly, I made the decision that I'm not going to live my life like that.
It's good for you.
It's just not going to happen. It's not worth living if you're going to be that way. And after so long of being in the field that I'm in with the Second Amendment particularly, I also quickly realized that ship has probably sailed. Worked at another firm for about a year, and then went out on my own about a year into practice. And by the time I'd done the cases that I had done and been on all the media outlets talking about those firearms cases, I don't think there was ever a chance I'd be working for anybody else for the rest of my life, because it's just not going to happen. A lot of these firms, they're extremely liberal. Yeah. And, not to say that I ever would want to go work for a big firm or anything, but even after that first year or two in practice with the stuff that I had done, you walk into one of those places, oh, you represented people of the organizations for the Second Amendment, so you want dead kids, don't you? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Shouldn't laugh at that, but it's ridiculously, right.
Have you ever been involved in local politics at all, though, Jim?
Well, yeah, a little bit. I was involved in fact, I sent it to Judge McEwen, who was so politically oriented, when I was elected as the township auditor at East Brandywine. I got voted in. I got 500 votes or something, and won. Nobody else ran against me, I don't think. And then I was a zoning hearing board member. And then I won't mention names, I guess, but I remember sitting around a table at a bar association meeting, and I spoke to one of the party bosses, and I said, I'd like to get involved in politics, because really, I'm an attorney, and I've been in this area since the 60s, and I know CEOs, and I know Chester Springs people. I also know migrant mushroom workers. I think I'd be good, like, a local rep or even a county commissioner. This guy puts his drink down. He says, "You don't understand how this works. You got to go to all the meetings, and then you got to hand out programs at all of our dinners. Then you got to come to the elections and hand out voting cards, and then maybe we'll give you some low-level office, but it won't be county commissioner. You got to work your way up." I said, "Brother, I'm not 25. I think I was like 50 or something." I said, "I'm too old to even get started. Thank you very much," and walked out. And then another time going in there when I was at the zoning hearing board, one of the guys said, "Hey, Jim, are you here for the district justice office?" Which is the local small claims court. I said, "No." Big line of people were. He spoke to me the next day. He said, "Jim, the first question they asked is, how much money have you given in the last 10 years to the Republican Party?" Which, you got to donate, you got to help. But the first question they asked every candidate was that. And I found out from a lot of guys that call me every year when it's time for the dinner at West Whiteland or the party dinner, they call me then. All they care about is themselves. They don't care about the country. They really don't care about Chester County or the state of Pennsylvania. They care about themselves. If I do this job good, they're going to offer me the treasurers. I can run for county treasurer. I can run for county commissioner. So all they want to do is just not make too many waves. So when you don't make too many waves, you don't do what President Trump does or what Mike or Chris or Jim Munnis do. You just got to, you get Jim to come and buy 2 tickets for his wife and him for the fundraiser. And that's about it. And we don't want, Jim might be perfect for the job, or Mike might be perfect for this elected official, but that's promised to somebody else. So I was, and then I just kind of said, I'm getting a little old now, and then maybe it's too old to get started, as one of the party leaders told me. So I just no. So I don't need.
That's a dirty game, man. It's a dirty game. I can't.
People say, well, you can run by your.
It's supposed to be best person for the job, isn't it? Isn't it supposed to be best person for the job?
If they say, well, you don't need the party back, you can just do it on your own. How much money do you want to spend on it in your own pocket? If you don't have the party, and Democrat Party too. If you have the Democrat Party, you get their backing and their financial backing. Have the Republican Party, you get their backing if you're the one that they pick. But that's the only game in town, unless you have super deep pockets like our hero once again does.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Jeremy Miller says coming to Columbia County is not seeking re-election, and no one is running for the Republican Party. I think we need to keep Jim in Chester County. Although
there we go. What party was that, Mike? Where was that? Montco?
Columbia County. So all the way up by
far.
Bloomsburg, I think. Right? Courthouse is in Bloomsburg, I believe.
Hanover Shoes is around there, I think it is. I'm not sure about that, but
I've been up there twice in the last month for different gun cases, but I can't recall off the top of my head what town the county seat is. You gotta understand, I've been in 43 different counties as of a couple of weeks ago doing gun cases, so I'm all over the place. But I believe it's Bloomsburg is where Columbia County is.
Well, it's tough. It's tough when you have the people. It really is difficult, and you can put all that time in and then lose. And I know many people in Chester County that have run for judge or run for Andy Dinniman's seat, let's say, here in Chester County. And when Andy Dinniman ran for either A county commissioner or B, state representative, he was basically unbeatable. Republicans liked him too, and Republicans that ran against him just kind of disappeared because they had their shot. Now it's time for somebody else. That's the way they think. Yeah.
And the MDJs, with that election and everything, what would you think would be best for an MDJ? And if you're looking at a candidate and you want to determine how am I choosing a good MDJ? Because I was having this conversation with somebody recently, and the first thing that came to my mind was kind of like what we were talking about. Find out if they're just going to rubber stamp preliminary hearings, because we don't need any more of that. Yeah. But they don't even have to be lawyers. That's one thing that I don't think people understand.
No, that's true. That's for listeners and people watching tonight. That's like small claims court. It's under $12,000, or some criminal preliminary hearings, as Mike stated. So a lot of them don't have the experience. A lot of them are perhaps retired police officers, because that's what they're doing. A lot of the criminal cases, prelim hearings, some arraignments perhaps. And so that's good. I find the small claims civilly is basically a waste of time. I jokingly said I'll consider myself a success when I don't do any magisterial district justice cases. I mean, civil cases, because the loser's just going to appeal. And the judge doesn't even need to give you a reason why she or he ruled in the case. Just
Yeah, it's crazy.
judgment for plaintiff for $4,500. Why?
Right.
Don't have to say that. Don't have to give any reason why. I had one, as I said in the beginning of this event tonight that we had, talk about sword versus shield, and you used it as a sword, not a shield. This is a criminal matter. Where's that in the statute? I said to the judge.
Right.
It's not, but he said it, so that made it gospel truth.
Right.
And so I guess what I'm saying, I had one judge who's now in the Court of Common Pleas here in Chester County. When he was in MDJ, thanked me for what I did for the poor people in Chester County. And that meant a lot to me that he said that in open court one time, just because he's showing that he cares. He's not just going to rubber stamp, but he was aware of who it was. He's not going to give him special treatment or, well, although he's guilty, I'm not going to make him guilty. But he knew what it was and was aware of things. A lot of these MDJs, I think, aren't, and they think that they're God's gift to man. And they just make these rulings without any explanation. And I think a lot of them have their minds on being a Court of Common Pleas judge. They just don't want to make any waves.
Jim, I have my MDJ rule book here, and it says, according to the MDJ rule book, the tie goes to the runner. So that's that's the statute that was invoked in that hearing.
I don't think it was Ty Cobb, but somebody said there's no such thing as a tie.
That's true.
It was either the baseball first or the runner first, one or the other.
Right.
That's right. Oh, Jim, I've had a blast with you. I know the beginning you said, I don't know what we're going to talk about for an hour. We've been talking for an hour and a half.
Oh, my goodness.
And
it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, it was good.
It flew by.
Yeah.
It absolutely flew by. We really appreciate you being generous with your time with us. And
well, thank you.
If you'd be willing to come back, if you'd be willing to come back, we'd love to have you back sometime.
Well, thank you. And put me on your list. And it has gone quickly. I wondered. I mean, I saw the most interesting person in the world. I thought it might be a copyright or a trademark violation, Mike, for Dos Equis beer. Personally, oh my God, you and I are going to be busy in court defending that. And then I thought I have to somehow justify that for an hour talking about something and wrestling. I know that's just was a fun thing for what we're going to talk about. But you're right. I'm looking at the clock here, an hour 30 plus, and my goodness, it's great fun. Chris, thank you, and Mike,
thank you.
I appreciate it.
Really enjoyable. Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'll let you know how the Dos Equis lawsuit goes. All right.
Yeah.
He doesn't always go on the radio, but when he does, he goes on Mike G in the morning.
I like the voice. He's hired. He's hired.
Thanks, Daddy-O.
Pretty good. Jim, can you tell everybody the website one more time?
Well, you can reach me in Westchester. It's my office, 610-350-0768 is the telephone number, or just Munnis Law, MUNNISLAW.com will be the website.
Perfect. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend. He's on LinkedIn. Check him out on LinkedIn. Wildly entertaining on LinkedIn. That's how I got sucked in. So thanks so much, Jim. And we hope to have you back on soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care.
And I appreciate all three of you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. That was a lot of fun.
It was. Great
I'm glad
time.
that he made it. I'm glad we finally got him on. And you know what was cool is that
Funny
a lot
too.
of the attorneys that we've had on our program in the past, they might not do exactly what I do, but they're in the same vein, usually criminal defense, right?
Nobody does.
Who are the
exactly
attorneys
what
that
you
we've
do.
had on? Well, who are the other attorneys that we've had on? Gilbert. We had
Gilbert.
on Richard Roberts,
Mhm.
you know, and these are guys who, I mean, they're co-counsels on, I'll make it. Rich is at my firm for the last year.
Right.
So
Right.
these are guys who I've been working cases with for many, many years. But with Jim, to be able to come on and talk about some of this other stuff like immigration and everything, it might be cool to have him back on to talk more about the process. He briefly mentioned how it's not very good, right? That's about the extent of what I got out of what he was saying. But it might be interesting to talk a little bit more about that.
Definitely.
And And
Maybe
some
that
of his
could be
other
like a
stuff
good
he's
little
done.
mini series for the show too. Maybe have some of those guys back on and have them really like laser focus in on their specialty and educational things for the listeners and the community out there
I
to
do
learn
need to
from.
have Rich on very soon. I'm even
Mhm.
thinking about doing a special edition somewhere in the middle between now and next week, because he won a major appeal for a CYS case. We just got the decision on Monday. So
Okay, good,
the
awesome.
world needs to hear about it.
Okay,
And
love to hear
you
about
know,
it. Yeah,
he did it again. He's just the man with that CYS stuff. So
I know he's been doing a lot of work for you and been very busy too. So which is great for him and his clients and the firm. So that's great too.
yeah, if
Mhm.
the government is interfering with your parental rights,
Mhm.
we have cysglawpa.com. Ask for Richard Roberts, or you can go to richardrobertsglaw.com.
Mhm.
All right. So Liberty.
Yes.
So what's going on? I'm turning the floor over to you.
Perfect.
Me.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
just
your
sitting
show.
here
We're just happy to be here.
Yes.
I'm just watching the Twitter feed on the indictment. I'm watching all of this now. I think I alerted every single person in my in my phone once I found out. I've been watching this. So right now what's trending on Twitter is 47th president. So they're saying Trump just became the 47th president from this indictment, which I know Philly Chris was saying and everybody was saying, because he's gonna, like we said last week, he's gonna be the underdog.
I think so. Yeah.
Right? It's framing him as,
I mean, it's only going to get him more support, right?
the face of injustice, like, or the face of, what's it called? Corrupt. The face of a corrupt prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's becoming.
Ridiculous.
And
yeah. I mean, for sure.
I mean, what do I know? I'm not a lawyer, but on Fox News, on Newsmax, and all these channels, they've been having lawyers on all week saying that exact thing. So it's not like we're just feeling it. It's
Well,
been
a lot of people too just want to be able to say he's arrested, and so many people, and I've even sort of made this mistake a little bit myself. And I know I hear you correcting people sometimes too, Mike. It's like you can get arrested for almost anything or any time. Like, it doesn't mean you're guilty, right? Like, innocent until proven guilty. But the fact that he will be the first president to formally get arrested, and people be like, "Oh, he got arrested. He got arrested."
Right.
So,
Well, and they tried to do that.
Am I right, Mike? Or, yeah.
Remember, they said, "Oh, the first president's being impeached." Like, they wanted to say that, or not the first, but
True.
something about this impeachment, or twice. I think first to be impeached twice. They said something like that.
Yeah, and I can think of some people who should have been arrested who haven't been too.
But you know what? That's going to work against the office. Somebody made this point that by indicting a former president, there's like protections, quote unquote. Like, I don't know if they're legal protections, but like official. But there's like a known thing that you don't do that, because the office of the presidency could take so many attacks from so many different angles and so many lawsuits and so many choices they have to do. It's very high pressure. Right. So to make it the standard, or to set a precedent that you can now sue or go after a former president criminally, this is going to affect their decisions and all their choices being made.
Sure.
Going forward, if they're nervous about that. It's like police officers, if they know that they're going to get such blowback every time that they make a choice, like they're going to be called racist or going to be called different names, they think a lot before they think a lot more now. A lot of people aren't applying for the job.
Well, plus it's another huge distraction from what's really going on, the collapse of the U.S. dollar and a huge market crash that I believe is pending. So, more distractions from what's really going on.
Right. Well, you think it's like pulling strings anyway. I mean, that's what you think is going on. You think this is all planned, right? Like, you think so. It's meant to be this way.
Right. I do.
You think that this is happening so that Trump can become the next president, so there can be more fighting? Is that like?
I don't think the division's going to go away anytime soon, and it will probably get worse. And unfortunately, I think that when he does win, there's going to be so many people on the right that are just so upset and have been pushed so to the edge. And I talk to people out there who follow the show and friends and other people, Mike and I run into, And I hear that from people, like they're like, oh, well, when he wins, then we're going to do this. And it's like, well, why don't we take the high road? Maybe somebody needs to take the high road at some point. And I don't really see that happening. But so I think the division will continue, and it's not going to look for, good for people who are more conservative, who, try to take advantage of maybe if, when Trump is president, leashing back out at people on the left, either. But I can understand why they feel that way. So that's my opinion.
Do we want to see if anybody else wants to pop in and have a guest pop in?
I think we should stick the link. Right. We want to hear our listeners' opinion on the Trump vote for indictment on the grand jury. If anybody wants to pop in.
Do you guys mind if I'm just going to step away real quick? I'll be right back. I do have to.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I can handle it. I've done this once or twice.
Yeah, it's your show, anyways.
I'll be right back after these words.
Never mind. Mike, can you go to the doc real quick? Because I just put like a tweet that I would just put a couple things in there because I can't show it from my end.
I don't know if I'm able to do that. I can check.
Oh, okay.
It would be lovely if this program had a producer.
Oh, okay. I thought you did it last time.
Pull that up. From the doc, I don't know if I did it from the doc. Let me see if I can figure out how to do
I'll read it then. There's a tweet from some random on Twitter that says, to all of you tweeting, I stand with Trump, feel free to do so. Just never refer to yourself as an American or a patriot ever again. You're neither. Too many good men and women have died defending this nation for you to steal their valor. Hashtag Rikers, hashtag Trump indictment. So Rikers has been trending also. Yeah. Like Rikers Island, I guess. Like they're all saying that Trump would go. I mean, the hashtags have been off the chain since this happened a few hours ago. It's been.
Who is this knucklehead?
It's been insane.
I might be able to pull this up.
Who's the knucklehead?
Let me see if I could do this. I probably need to.
Oh, look, CB's joined. CB joined. Yeah, so Rikers.
Hold on, I'll let him in a minute. Hold on,
I have a question, Mike. Is that where Trump would go if he went to jail? I mean, why are they even saying that right now? Like, they're so out of control.
Hold on a second.
Governor DeSantis is trending. Let's see. Oh my goodness. This broke right before the show, so it's all I could think about.
Yeah, I don't think that
Michael Cohen's trending now.
Yeah, I don't think that I can bring it up, unfortunately.
Oh.
Anybody who wants to join, call on in by hitting that link. And
you hit the link, and then if you don't want to show, before you go on the show, before we let you in, you can put your camera off so you don't have to show your face if you don't want to. You could just call in by voice.
I also have to let them in if they're going to.
Yeah, he has to let you in.
Anybody can click the link, but I still.
But a lot of people are hesitant because they don't want to go on camera. So if you want to go on camera, you go to the bottom, you hit the little thing that says Start Cam, click it off, so there's a red line through it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot going on in this next year. Jeremy brings up a good point, says he needs to press for a speedy trial so they don't drag this out to the 2024 general election. Criminal cases take a long time. I don't think people realize how long they take because you watch TV like Law and Order and a crime happens and they bring the guy in and the next day they're at trial. Doesn't exactly work like that. This can be a long drawn out process.
Oh my gosh, that's so frustrating.
And not to mention they're talking about potential prosecution in Georgia as well, right? So
really?
I did hear about that, yeah. CB says this will boost the Trump campaign and will be a win.
Yeah, but I want to actually make sure that he stays out. You know, this seems ridiculous. Like somebody was saying that he refuses to charge something for prostitution or something like the crimes are actually on the books right now. Like they're like not charging certain things, but yet they're like searching and digging for this one from years ago. It's like, my point is how, like Mike kind of said, how can this in any way, shape, or form not look political in any way at any point? This just looks political. There's no matter what. I mean, it's going to cause an uproar in the country. It's such a horrible decision.
Yeah.
All on Michael Cohen too. Oh
Well,
man.
we planned on having Michael Cohen on the program, but couldn't make it.
Well, yeah. And in the doc, I guess you can't click on anything, but I did put a picture of Paula Michelle White, who was President Trump's pastor advisor when he was under. So she said, today I'm asking for prayer for all of our nation, President Trump and his family. All of us, regardless of party, should be appalled by the weaponization of the judicial system against someone they disagree with. Deuteronomy 16:18 through 20, prayer Trump, hashtags. So we got some prayers going on. And then I did put that one Twitter link that you had put, Mike. But I guess, again, you can't pull it up because our producer has gone away. It was the one about the ATF when the Hunter Biden link, Mike, clip that you showed.
Mm-hmm.
That one was a funny one. Okay, then we had a lot going on regarding that shooting, the Tennessee shooting, which was obviously horrific and sad. But that they actually released that footage. So I guess we'd wait for Philly Chris to come back and get your guys' reactions on that. That was some interesting footage of the responders for that.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, huh?
It was absolutely insane. I don't know, has any of our listeners watched that video on YouTube?
Yeah.
Not sure if they respond. What else? Oh, and then there was a water issue in Philly. I guess kind of doing like rapid fire. There was the Philly spill in Bristol, I believe, some chemicals into the Delaware River, I believe it was. And so Philly, I don't know if anybody in the comments lives in Philly. I don't know. And there was issues with the water. There was an alert. Oh, Philly Chris knows more about it. There was an alert to get bottled water. So Philly Chris had some footage of some family members that could not get water. It was sold out within like seconds. Right, Philly Chris?
Yeah, it was real crazy to see that, locally, something happening again with environmental situation. I think there was another like train derailment today somewhere that I don't know if you guys were just talking about that.
Involving chemicals?
I was talking about the chemical spill in Philly and Bristol that sent the alert out in Philly. They said it was sent out it was sent out too late or something.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time, I don't know, but they're saying some serious chemicals. I think somebody said they were the same chemicals from the Ohio train derailment that were spilled into the Delaware River.
It's very strange. Again, and I think we talked about this before in the show, but train derailments happen a lot. But as Durso pointed out that one time we were talking about a few weeks ago, like how often do they involve these really, really nasty chemicals and then they light them on fire or they're ending up in the water supply?
Somebody had said if you look up these chemicals, I believe they said something about colon cancer they can cause. How scary is that?
Yeah, they're bad chemicals.
But there's not a lot of information on apparently TikTok. The person on TikTok who gives a lot of information out, apparently people were seeing that alert on TikTok before they were getting the text from the local government. So
right. Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah, that's wild. So there was that spill in Philly. So there was the drinking water, and which caused the effect of water being sold out, bottled water for the residents in Philly. It actually spread to New Jersey counties. And then I saw people on TikTok saying, hey, don't come to Jersey. Somebody saying, go over to Jersey, get water. And the Jersey people were like, don't come here, stay in Philly. We're out over here too.
Yeah.
And it causes a chain reaction. And I'm sure the suburbs in Philly, I'm sure everybody was freaking out. I actually saw in a forum in one of the counties near me that they were freaking out and somebody made a joke. And then all the Karens came in and were like, how dare you joke about this water issue? This is serious. And that was one of the either Delaware County or Chester County. There was a fight going on online about the missing water in their grocery. It's just been wild. I believe I was trying to get some water delivered and there was only one 24-pack left. So that was pretty crazy. I'm pretty far And there was Philly Chris. I was talking to Mike to see your guys' reaction. I know you guys watched the footage that came out from the Tennessee shooting of the first responders, so the police.
Oh, right.
And Philly Chris, you had a pretty strong reaction when I had asked about you. You kind of called, I think this, what was your reaction to the way they entered the building? And remember you talked about the calmness of the one officer and you had a sort of an inkling about his background?
Yeah, I mean, I was highly impressed with pretty much all those police officers, and especially the one that you see get out of the vehicle and retrieve his, I think it was an AR platform rifle, and talk to the one teacher. I assume she was a teacher, and then he calmly, he's even like, "Thank you," yes, ma'am, or he stayed calm. I just kind of assumed early on, based on his behavior and his actions and level of calmness, that he was probably former military, and I think later you were able to confirm that, right, Liberty?
Yes, he was actually Marine.
Yeah,
Right. And Philly Chris predicted that.
Well, that was, I think, sort of obvious, but
you said it was obvious. But I don't know if I would have noticed that, to be honest. I don't know. I guess you're pretty good with that awareness. But then you guys were commenting on the way they entered, right?
Yeah, they were clearing rooms. They obviously had training and looked like they had worked together, I think, before the event to be able to, because in those like Mike talked so much about those critical incidents in the seminar, and I think unless you've ever been in a critical incident, whether it's something like that or a car accident, or you've been around like a terrorist type of situation, like I don't think really how you're going to react. And a lot of people like to think they're going to be calm and handle it, but once that adrenaline gets pumping and flowing and you have that tunnel vision and all those other things Mike talks about, it's just that you don't know how you're going to react till you're in that situation. And the only way you're going to change or potentially change the statistical probability of not reacting well is training for it, putting yourself in those situations and doing some training and working with other people and even getting surprised. So very important, I think. But in this situation, we saw police officers really did put themselves in the line of fire potentially for those children. So I think that's very impressive the way they handled it. And not that you want to see anybody get shot, even the individual who was behind the shooting, but they did what they needed to do to stop the threat, right?
Yeah, if somebody's in the process of killing innocent human beings, then I do want to see them get shot. Sorry, not sorry.
Well, they're good. That's right.
Under those circumstances, yes, I want to see
there's sort of a time when it makes sense. Yeah, I got you.
If you're the one murdering innocent people. Then,
although I would like, in a way, like if they could have, I mean, again, they did what they needed to do, but like you almost want this person to be around to suffer the consequences. Like I think death is almost like an easy escape from the hell that they would have in prison, and hearing from them directly about what they were in their mindset, so we can fix this stuff. But yeah, they don't deserve to be here. So.
I know it's a very gentle topic, but it seems the reaction was the knee-jerk usual reaction to gun control. And then once more facts came out, it seemed to tote the other line and kind of go to sort of the sense of like kind of more feeling sorry for the community that this shooter was attached to, right? That seems to be what's kind of trending right now. It was, the transgender community more have like sympathy for them. I guess Mike had already talked about that, but it's very, very strange what's been trending on Twitter all day. I don't know.
Well, there's like an irrational level of division at this point. Right. Like the fact that we can't come together on opposite political sides in a situation like this and agree on certain basic elements of it is really ridiculous, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, listener B from Arizona had sent a link, and it was of the press secretary today speaking about the reaction, and it was really just being sensitive to the transgender community today, something like that. Mm-hmm. We can't play it because Russ isn't here, but yeah, it was very strange. I can't even imagine, somebody coming out and saying, "Hey, let's be sensitive to the gun owning community after a shooting happened." Can you guys see that happening? Let's be sensitive to the gun.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Or let's be sensitive to white men today because
Right.
they're taking a whole lot of they're
Yeah.
catching a whole lot of heat over this. So
Can you
there's a
imagine?
lot of innocent white men who didn't do anything wrong, and we want to be mindful that
And
Well, you're
they
not
didn't do
innocent to
this,
begin
so.
with is the problem.
And actually, quite frankly, maybe we should take an MO from that book. Maybe that would be a decent thing to say for once, like, hey, this one individual did this,
Mhm.
and obviously they have something going on in their brain that's not healthy for somebody to do this. And let's not attack all gun owners. Let's not attack all, right? If somebody did it, let's not attack all the transgender community. Let's not attack all white men. I mean,
Is there
That's
anything
what I
else?
feel like saying. Like, see what we've been talking about this whole time.
Exactly.
Right?
See what we've been saying this whole time. That's how it feels. Then when one person ruins it for the rest of everybody, it's not fair. Is that fair?
Can you think, Mike, of anything else where it's like this, where they really objectify the object? Like we were joking about the drunk driving thing the other day, right? Like, is there anything else you guys can think of, Liberty or Mike, where it is the same as this? There isn't, right?
No.
I mean, you never hear like, yeah, well, that guy was driving home and he mowed down a bunch of kids, but he was having a really rough day at work, and
Right.
that,
Right.
like we're talking about.
Yeah, they're not very empathetic. And the thing is they could get to apparently this person was being treated for emotional issues before, and you got to put a lot more emphasis on it. Of course, people are not going to want to come forward even more so, but if they're experiencing issues already, you can see that issue in the community because there's the red flag laws. They're all talking about red flag laws, and they want these to be more strict.
I think we do see that in some other situations. I've seen this. I can't give any specific examples off the top of my head, but I feel like I've seen instances where somebody has killed a law enforcement officer, and there are reports that come out about a tough life they had.
Okay, gotcha.
Would that surprise you?
No, that doesn't really surprise me. That's in line with what the way police are being treated, the whole defund. So yeah, that makes sense. Now that you say it, I think it's like they sort of justify it through some sort of excuses in a way, right?
I don't think I'm making that up. I don't think I'm making it up.
No.
Or what was it, Mike? That police officers will make? What was it?
We got I said I think that I've seen it in the past where somebody who murdered a police officer, they did some kind of a piece on them like that, like what a tough life they had.
Somebody that. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, of course, because it's the communities that, it's the what do they call them? I don't know.
Well, I think
I don't know how to word it, so I'll get in trouble.
I think unfortunately it's very telling of our society and humanity right now, and the fact that the medical community hasn't really solved that issue, and it seems like it's getting much worse.
Right.
Let's talk about aliens.
Hey, man, let's do it. Yeah, I was wondering if you're.
Or maybe just the technology. Maybe just the technology. Let's talk a little bit about it. Maybe we could do like a watch along with everybody. We set up like a time. We say, okay, you got to rent this movie. We're all gonna watch it, but Chris and I are gonna comment on it.
Yeah.
While we're watching it, because we obviously can't put it on the screen because that wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, maybe not, because it is. There are other things on the YouTube that are probably public, but you're right. Yeah, at least we could talk about it. If they're watching it.
Yeah, so
maybe we could get permission. Maybe we could get permission to do it somehow. I'll have to look into that.
How do you get it where everybody presses play at the same time?
Right.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's a tough one.
I mean,
I did want to thank you though for taking the time to watch it. I know you're very busy, like for real busy, and have other things that you're interested in too. But I appreciate you checking out.
You held me hostage.
Did I?
Really? Yeah.
It reminds me of a time I was over some really close friends, basically family, and they pulled out their wedding video.
I heard about that.
No, that was awesome. Yeah. No, but I do appreciate, for everybody who was there to check it out, because I've been talking about it on the show for a long time, and I'd love to hear your reaction now that you had the opportunity to see it and hear directly from Dr. Greer. What your thoughts are now. Has it changed at all, or do you see it differently in any way from when we've talked about it in the past on the show, or what are your overall thoughts, Mike?
It's very tough one, because the information that's being presented, a lot of it is, hey, we've been told X, Y, and Z from some very credible people. And there are trials that are based on circumstantial evidence. I think one of the issues is that from the documentary perspective, it's hearsay because the layer removed, right? I tend to, maybe there's something wrong with me, but I look at everything in the context of like a trial. And if this were a trial, the information that you heard from somebody else is not admissible evidence. You have to have the person themselves come on and talk about it, which they didn't seem to have in that particular documentary that we were watching. I'm not saying that it's not true because of that, but you would like some more in order to get there. There's no direct evidence, and I think that seems to be what they're looking for. When you talk about the theories that they're presenting, a lot of them make sense, and it's a very tricky one, because this is all the kind of thing that if what they're saying is true, it's going to be impossible to prove, because it's an unconstitutional government agency essentially running this stuff. And, how do you ever hold that type of thing accountable? If they're willing to operate outside the bounds of the law by way of their very existence, then how could you possibly expect them to comply with any semblance of an investigation or any mechanism for them to be held accountable? So it's a tough one. It's a tough one to prove one way or the other. Is that Homeschool Will in the comments over there?
It looks like it.
Homeschool Will, how you doing? How you doing? The show's been going great, but not the same without you, my man. We'll have to get you on sometime soon. I think I'm going to call it an evening. There's a lot going on in the world. We might have to pop back in for another special edition of the episode before next week. But once again, thank you to all of our lovely listeners. I'm not repeating it, Philly Chris.
Yeah, sorry. For a second, I had to talk.
The what?
No, I'm just joking. The power went out.
The literal one time that Mike had a really in-depth response about.
The timing was really weird,
Oh
though.
my God.
What just happened? I'm like, is this it? Is the power out?
He was like,
EMP attack, everybody.
It was an in-depth analysis, and Billy Chris disappeared.
Seriously, right? Talk about timing. No, literally, everything just shut off, and I was like, wait a second, what just happened? So I heard a little bit of what you're saying, though, because I always have the show going on my phone. Okay. So I kind of listened to you while I was rebooting everything.
Jeremy says, let's not forget the U.S. government forced the Soviet Union over the financial edge with the Star Wars program. The UFO thing could be the same situation.
Yeah.
A little bit of a bluff.
Let's say not for the U.S. government forced the Soviet Union over the financial edge. Yeah, no, absolutely. And the whole the race to the moon, there's a lot of these programs. And I suppose in some ways there were some benefits to some of that stuff, the space race, right? The Reagan era, all that stuff. But based on what Dr. Greer is saying and what you were I heard part of what you said, I do believe it is a constitutional crisis. I do believe that there's a rogue element.
How do you hold them accountable, right? Because if they're really that undercover, you're not going to catch them in the act.
Right. Do you guys remember what I said I think is going to happen?
They are not and will not play by the rules.
Right.
No, remind us.
What you think is going to happen is a false flag operation.
I really do think, I hate to say it, because I always try to have hope, but looking at things again from a probability standpoint and the fact that so few people are aware, and I understand why people are busy, they have lives, but the technology they have is so far advanced. And if they deploy it as, a false flag innovation, or they want to use it, however they want to use it, and they are now, the chances of it being stopped with the way things are right now in the world, I think it's very unlikely. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to enter into some real dark times, as a result of that. The financial crisis, we're just on the early stages and the cusp of a major depression, unlike we've ever seen, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be sooner than later. Nancy Pelosi, for example, just in the past few days, sold positions on quite a few investments that she's taken a loss, her and her husband are taking losses on, just to get their money out of the market. And you see that, those people in Congress, and she's not the only one running for the hills right now. Again, this is the stuff I used to see when I worked in financial services. Like, people in the know are making a lot of moves right now. And there's things that happened to the dollar just in the past week that have never happened. And I hate to say it, but if there was ever time to stock up on supplies, have a plan, figure out what you're going to do if you don't have money, I think by this summer, they're going to try to convert the currency over to this Fed Now system. That's what they're going to call it. I'm just being a realist here. I think we're about to enter into times most people are just not prepared for. And you saw people running out for water the other day. Imagine if they don't have food for a few days, right? And then there's some sort of false flag alien invasion on top of it potentially at some point, right? So anyway, that's why I've been trying to be vocal about it. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. The evidence is out there. I don't really care anymore what people think of me. I've had people tell me, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, this, that, and everything else." I'm not right about everything, but I think I've been pretty on track with a lot of things I've said on the air, and I'm just saying it because I care. So anyway.
Hold on. I want you to look into your camera. I want you to tell people exactly what they have to do to prepare, and you'll know when. Don't do it just now. You'll know when.
You'll know when.
We're gonna have to cut the show with that. We're gonna have to do the outro with that one. What do you think?
I think it was good. Yeah, that was good.
Give a promo. Tell everybody what they need to do to prepare.
I suppose thinking about this for a long time and having
Just say it
yeah,
like
yeah,
you
okay.
mean it. Let me tell you something, brother.
right, yeah, right, yeah, man. Hey, now, just get, if you really haven't done it yet,
Hold
I think
on.
a lot of
Hey
our listeners
now,
are ready.
Instead of hey now, the guy who you're dressed up like,
Yeah.
he says hey yo. That's
Hey,
how
yo.
he starts off every promo. He starts
All
off hey yo. So
Hey,
that's how he
yo,
gets started.
so, if you don't have any water and some food and maybe a plan, hey, yo, you got to do that, yo.
But no, in all seriousness, your family, friends, people, I think a lot of our listeners are kind of already ready in a lot of ways. But gold and silver, I've mentioned that on the show, numerous times. Diversification in your supplies and your ability to trade and have a network of people around you that you trust and care about. Because a lot of people think can't happen here. Well, that's why it probably will happen here, and it's coming. The time is now. The time is near. Let me
tell you something, brother. You gotta say your prayers. You gotta eat your vitamins. You gotta stock up on ammunition. Your canned goods.
Right there, you go. You're doing a better job, Mike.
Yeah. Make sure you got enough coffee, plenty of coffee, and plenty of water.
Have some candles, all kinds of stuff, whatever you can think of. Imagine tomorrow you wake up and you can't get to the bank, and then soon after that, who knows what happens? The power's out. There's people trying to get to your house to get what you have. You're going to hunker down. You're going to go somewhere. Who are you going to be with? Those types of things. I mean, look at all these shows on TV. You guys notice all these crazy shows that are on TV? How many times have they sort of predicted in the shows and the movies, and then it turns into reality? Like, past couple of years, there's been a lot of crazy, movies and shows about The Last of Us. That's a big one. You guys watched it? I don't know. A bunch of people have told me about it. I checked it out recently. And I said not long ago, and I sort of made that prediction off the air about the whole fungus thing. And then that popped up yesterday on your Twitter feed, right, Mike?
A very wise man named Homeschool Will once said, "Our futures are being decided for us, and regardless who is in power, there is pain in our future."
Will is right, and thank you for sharing that, Will. And he's way ahead of his time. He reminds me of somebody I know who is a very well accomplished attorney and has a lot of miles on his tires at a pretty young age, and it does incredible work for people. And everybody on the show knows who I'm talking about, and that's you. And Will, I'd put you in that category. It's been my honor to talk to you off the air and on the show. And he's right. I think he knows what's coming. At this point, if you don't know, have a little bit of an inkling about what we're about to head into, then I feel a little sorry for you. But a lot of people aren't ready for what we're going to have.
You don't know. Now you know.
Probably face the government regulating what currency can be used.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did you talk about the other countries getting off of the dollar?
Yeah, there's, just again in the past few days.
You did talk about it already. Well, I was messing around with NWO music, probably.
I've talked about it in the past, but probably again, a lot of our listeners have seen it. But yeah, just in the past couple of days, again, there's all these.
No, did you talk about it today?
No,
because that article just came out like yesterday, right? That four countries are
right.
Potentially.
I have a little clip. I didn't get to
Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, and Iran.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Let me just verify here real quick. Here, I could probably play it. It's okay to play this here and just listen to this, I guess.
Yuan for international payments instead of the dollar. Saudi Arabia is also in talks with Beijing to do the same thing. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, they are in talks with Iran as well to consider an economic alliance with China and Russia. And they can even be joining the BRIC countries, which is an acronym for these countries here, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries all have emerging economies. So what happens if our economy and the US dollar are no longer the world's dominant currency? Former Assistant Treasury Secretary and host of the Monica Crowley podcast, Monica Crowley, is here to weigh in. Monica, great to see you this morning. Let's start right there. What happens if these emerging economies move away from the US dollar towards the Chinese yuan?
Well, good morning, Will. It's great to be with you. And it's really hard to overstate exactly how catastrophic the abandonment of the U.S. dollar would be as the world's global reserve currency. Look, since the end of World War II, the dollar has been the safe place to go, and it's been backed up by a couple of things. It originally was backed up by gold, but President Nixon took off the gold standard, so there's no hard asset backing up the dollar anymore for the last...
Hit pause. Well, there it is right there. Can you really blame them for leaving?
No.
With the fact that our money is not backed by anything? And
no.
has not been, and there's so much.
Theirs isn't really either. But the thing is, I've mentioned this on the show, I believe, unfortunately.
Well, but if
like the Trump,
I get that. I get that theirs isn't either. But ultimately, what's the difference? What's the incentive to stay here?
No, I don't blame them at
us,
all.
right? Which they want is. It would hurt us pretty bad.
We've been manipulating them and, holding them accountable and forcing them to use our money. And, and then we do all kinds of mean and nasty things to them with trade. And, we're not innocent at all in this. And if anything, we really have been manipulating the world stage. But that's because after World War II, basically we were able to kind of take control on a global scale militarily and monetarily and through the Federal Reserve System. But we're not in that position anymore. I mean, in my opinion, we already got knocked off the hill. Now we're just seeing the final moves. That's again why I've mentioned this for a long time. But
do you think it's interesting that we don't see this under Trump, though? Because it's not like he was soft on China and Russia, right? There were sanctions.
He was doing a lot of things
there were tariffs.
One of the reasons I haven't lost faith in Trump, although there are things that I don't like about him related to the the space the space
UFOs.
Yeah, because I think he may have been hoodwinked, like Dr. Greer said, but that, we can get into that another time. But he was putting us back into a position where we had strength militarily and financially. Now, obviously, when this clown got in the White House, however he got in there, he's in on it. He's working with these globalists. It's all a global agenda. I mean, if you look at Agenda 21, you look at all these things that Klaus Schwab and the organization he's involved with, the World Economic Forum, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is not by accident. It's clearly been done on purpose and by design, and people don't realize, how many people even know what a fiat currency is. I talk to people all the time, and hate to say it, maybe there's a reason we weren't taught that in school, right? People don't understand. Like, why are you not taught that growing up? Most people don't know that we went off of a standard that was gold. Like,
yeah, I remember my dad telling me about that. And I don't know that I quite understood it when I was a kid.
It's very confusing.
Back in
but
the day,
right.
By gold.
It's also designed to be extremely confusing, sort of like the tax code. Most people don't want any part of it. Just like, I got a job, I got enough money, I'm saving. But here's the sad thing about it. People who have worked the majority of their lives, who are pretty wealthy right now, are going to wake up one day and literally realize that their wealth was just pulled right out from under them. So what's going to be valuable at that time? The relationships, if you have food on the table, if you have water, medical supplies. Like, I hope it doesn't come to that, but I don't see it not going that direction. And the longer we've talked about this, and the more things that have happened, even just in the past few months, past couple of years, it's like, that's what they want. They want to take control. They want to get people fully back under control on a global scale. The tyranny that we're about to enter into and our children are going to experience is unprecedented in global history that I'm aware of,
Well, you know what they say. When you're NWO, you're NWO for life.
Oh my gosh.
Right. NWO for life, baby.
Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney from Philadelphia. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.